Hi, I'm Amanda, a 34-year-old interior designer with a passion for creating beautiful spaces. The soft clinking of dishes and low conversation filled our dining room. Eric, my husband, poured another glass of wine for his dad, John, while his mom, Mary, praised the lamb I had spent the afternoon preparing. The mood was light and almost festive, but I could feel tension building as the annual family vacation discussion was about to start. So, where are we thinking of going this year? Paris? Tokyo? Eric's younger sister Lucy asked excitedly. Peter, the eldest sibling, was busy on his phone, probably looking at flights and hotels. He glanced up and said, "How about somewhere tropical, like Bali or Thailand?" I saw an opening and cleared my throat. Actually, I was thinking you could all come to my vacation home on the coast. It's peaceful, spacious, and right on the beach, a perfect getaway. The room went quiet. John and Mary exchanged looks before Mary responded, her tone polite but dismissive. "Oh, that's a lovely idea, Amanda, but we were thinking of something more exotic this year. Your place is wonderful, but the kids love exploring new countries." Eric agreed, without realizing how it stung. "Yeah, Amanda's place is great for a weekend, but imagine the adventure overseas." I felt hurt but hid it behind a smile. "Of course, I understand, just thought I'd offer." Peter finally looked up from his phone. "Let's vote, then. All for going abroad?" Hands shot up around the table, except mine. "And all for Amanda's place?" I raised my hand, half-heartedly. It was the only one. "Well, that's settled. Thailand it is," Lucy exclaimed, clapping her hands. The rest of the dinner was a blur as they excitedly talked about the trip I was no longer part of. Under the table, Eric squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thanks for offering, honey, we'll go another time. Just the two of us." As they continued talking about temples and food, I quietly withdrew into my thoughts. I had offered a piece of my world, only for it to be turned down. The message was clear: I was good enough to host their dinners, but not their vacations. After dinner, when everyone left and Eric went to his study, I stayed behind to clean up. The family's rejection felt personal, like a judgment on my place among them, but I decided not to let it affect the life Eric and I had built together. They might not fully accept me, but I wouldn't let that define my worth or the love I had for my husband. As I stood alone in the quiet, I realized it might be time to stop trying so hard to win their approval and start living on my own terms. I wasn't sure how things would unfold, but as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, a small, defiant part of me was already planning a summer they wouldn't forget at my beautiful, yet unwanted, beach house. A few days after that family dinner, John called. His usual calm voice now had a touch of desperation. "Hey Amanda, we've hit a snag with our Thailand trip. There was a mix-up with the dates, and everything is fully booked because of a festival. We were wondering if we could take you up on your offer to use your beach house." I paused, still feeling the sting from how they dismissed my offer before, but I was already thinking of a plan. "Oh, that's unfortunate," I said, "but sure, the house is available. I'd be happy to host you all. You're a lifesaver, Amanda, we really appreciate it." After hanging up, I turned to Eric, who was just as surprised as I was. "Now they want to stay at our beach house, after voting it down?" I said, smiling. "Looks like fate has its own plans." My mind was already busy planning a few surprises for their stay. The following weekend, I went to the beach house under the guise of preparing it for the family, but instead, I installed hidden cameras in the common areas, not to spy on them, but to catch their reactions to the small inconveniences I had in store. I set the thermostat to heat the house to a chilly 60 degrees, and I left a note about a problem with the hot water heater, warning them it might take a while to warm up, just giving them a taste of the adventure they wanted. I told Eric, while also programming the smart home system to flicker the lights randomly in the evenings. Eric chuckled, but I could hear the nervousness in his voice. "You're not going to make it too rough, are you? Just a little harmless fun. Let's see if they notice any difference between an exotic getaway and my boring beach house," I replied, grinning. When John, Mary, Peter, and Lucy arrived, I greeted them warmly. "Make yourselves at home. Oh, and just a heads up, the water heater can be a bit quirky. You might need to let it run for a bit to get hot water." "Thanks for letting us use the place, Amanda," Mary said, though there was a hint of reluctance in her voice, likely remembering how they rejected my offer earlier. "No problem at all. I hope you find it relaxing," I said with a smile, hiding the irony in my words. After making sure they were settled in, Eric and I excused ourselves, claiming we had urgent work projects that needed our attention back in the city. Now, it was time to see how their little vacation would play out on its own. I couldn't resist checking the live feed from the cameras. The first incident happened during their first dinner. As Peter was telling one of the family's favorite stories, the lights suddenly went out, plunging the room into confusion. Muffled curses and confused shouts filled the room until Lucy found the candles I had strategically placed in the kitchen.
Guess the house really wants us to have an authentic experience, Lucy joked, though her voice was shaky as the flickering candlelight cast uneasy shadows across her face. Over the next few days, I watched as the family struggled with each little inconvenience. John kept fiddling with the thermostat, eventually giving up and wrapping himself in a sweater I had purposely left on a chair. Mary grumbled about the unpredictable hot water, and their frustration hit a peak when they planned a day out on the water using the boat docked at the house. I had hidden the key and left a cryptic note saying it was somewhere obvious. They spent half the day searching for it, their frustration growing with every failed attempt. As I watched from a distance, I felt a mix of guilt and satisfaction. This was more than just payback, it was a lesson in humility and respect, served in a place they had dismissed so easily. The water heater's gone off again, Mary snapped, her voice filled with frustration as another cold draft swept through the house. Can someone check the thermostat? It's freezing in here, Peter grumbled, shivering as he pulled a blanket tighter around his shoulders. I've reset it 3 times already, he added. It's not working, and these lights won't stop flickering. Lucy sighed, hugging herself to stay warm, clearly worn out by the endless inconveniences. This was supposed to be a relaxing vacation. Amanda, any ideas? Mary's voice crackled over the speakerphone, a mix of irritation and hope. Oh, that's strange. Everything was working fine before you arrived, I replied, keeping my voice calm and detached, as if I wasn't responsible for the chaos. Maybe check the circuit breaker. I'll send someone over when I can, but with the storm, it might take a while. As the storm outside worsened, the family's mood grew even darker. John tried to lift everyone's spirits. Come on, let's not let this ruin the trip. How about some board games by candlelight? Great idea, Dad, except the games are in the basement, which is flooding. Peter shot back sarcastically, making Mary groan in frustration. The storm outside intensified, rattling the windows and doors like it was reflecting the turmoil inside. Lucy searched for a working flashlight just as a gust of wind slammed a window shut, plunging the room into complete darkness. This is ridiculous. We should have stayed home, Mary said, her voice echoing in the pitch-black room, full of fear and frustration. Nobody could have predicted this weather. Mom, let's just make the best of it, Lucy replied, her voice strained as she finally found a weak flashlight. By the next morning, the storm was still raging. John called again, sounding desperate. Amanda, we're thinking of cutting the trip short. The power's out, and now there's a leak in the ceiling. Can you help us get out of here? I'll see what I can do. John, stay safe, and I'll update you soon, I said, feeling a mix of satisfaction and guilt. They were finally getting a taste of what it felt like to be disregarded. When I called back with news of a local who could drive them to the nearest town, the family was packed and ready to leave. Their departure was rushed and frazzled, leaving the once warm and inviting beach house in complete disarray. As their car disappeared down the storm-soaked road, the house fell silent. The cameras kept recording the empty rooms, capturing the aftermath of the week's orchestrated chaos. The family returned home with dampened spirits, leaving behind a trail of bickering and complaints that would surely echo in future awkward family gatherings. My subtle manipulations had led to a cold realization for the family, a reminder of the importance of empathy and respect. Lessons they were now learning after experiencing what they had so casually imposed on others. The dining room was warmly lit, and the table was set as if the beach house incidents were just a distant memory. As John, Mary, Peter, and Lucy settled into their seats, there was a subtle tension in the air. Their expressions showed a mix of relief and lingering stress from their abrupt vacation. Thanks for hosting dinner, Amanda. It's nice to end the trip on a positive note, John said, trying to smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Absolutely, I replied cheerfully. I thought we could all use a little cheering up. I've got a surprise for everyone, some highlights from the vacation. Eric clicked the remote, and the projector came to life. The first clips were harmless, showing their arrival and initial excitement. Laughter filled the room, momentarily easing the awkwardness. But as the video progressed, the mood shifted. Footage of the flickering lights, the thermostat troubles, and their frustrated searches played on the screen. Peter's laughter faded. "Wait, why did you record all this, Amanda?" "Just capturing some memorable moments," I said lightly, but I held their gaze, watching as the realization dawned. The last clip showed their rushed departure in the storm, leaving the room in silence. Mary was the first to speak, her voice tinged with confusion and suspicion. "Amanda, was this all some kind of joke to you?" "It wasn't a joke," I said, my voice calm but serious. "It was a lesson in what it feels like to be dismissed and disregarded, just as I was when I offered my home for the vacation." Lucy looked down, her face flushed with shame. "Amanda, we didn't realize we made you feel that way."
John cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "We're truly sorry, Amanda. It seems we've taken your kindness for granted." Seeing their genuine remorse, I softened a little, realizing that maybe they had finally understood. "I appreciate that," I said. "All I ask is for mutual respect. If that's not possible, then maybe we should reconsider our future gatherings." Eric, who had been quiet, finally spoke up in support. "We need to make sure everyone feels valued in this family, that's non-negotiable." Mary nodded, her voice sincere. "You're right, Amanda, we've learned our lesson, even if it was a hard one. Can we move forward from this?" "I'm willing to move forward," I replied, "but remember, any future disrespect will be a deal-breaker for me." Dinner ended on a thoughtful note, with everyone reflecting on the night's revelations. As John, Mary, Peter, and Lucy said their goodbyes, their words were more heartfelt, showing a real promise to do better in the future. When I was alone with Eric, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. "Standing up for yourself doesn't always feel good, but it's necessary," I said. "And you did it beautifully," Eric reassured me. "They'll think twice before overlooking anyone again." The evening closed with a sense of both closure and a new beginning, not just for me, but for the entire family. Respect, once ignored, was now at the forefront of everyone's mind, like a silent promise to guide all future interactions. And that's the end of our story. What do you think? Was Amanda's way of teaching her family a lesson about respect and inclusion justified, or do you think there were better ways to handle it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more content like this. Your support means a lot.
I love that turn to pain. The sharp sound of the slap echoed through the silent room, cutting through the air like a blade. My cheek stung with a fiery pain, but it was nothing compared to the humiliation surging through me. My heart pounded as I stared at him, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. Larry, my fiancé, the man I had trusted with my whole heart, had just struck me. His eyes burned with anger, his chest rising and falling rapidly, as if he were holding back words he wanted to scream. But he didn't say a thing. Instead, he turned on his heel and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I stood frozen, my hands trembling as I touched my burning face. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just from the physical pain but from the deeper wound his actions had left in my soul. This wasn't just a single moment of rage. It was a betrayal, a breaking point, and in that instant, I knew everything had changed forever. My name is Elizabeth Banks, and I am 26 years old. For the past 7 years, I had been in a relationship with Larry Martinez, the man I once believed was my soulmate. We met when I was just 19, and from the beginning, he made me feel special, like I was the center of his universe. When he proposed in June 2024, I was overwhelmed with happiness, convinced that we were destined to spend our lives together. Our wedding was planned for August 2025, a sentimental date marking the anniversary of the day we first met. I had spent years dreaming of this moment, believing that my life was falling perfectly into place. Little did I know I was headed straight for heartbreak, the beginning of the cracks. The excitement of wedding planning consumed me. By October 2024, I had dived headfirst into organizing every little detail, the color scheme, the flowers, the music. I envisioned a breathtaking ceremony with a delicate light blue and white theme, a picture-perfect spring wedding. I spent hours scrolling through Pinterest, curating mood boards, and sending Larry my ideas. His responses? Always the same, short, dismissive, uninterested. "Looks good," he'd say. Or worse, he'd just send a simple thumbs-up emoji. At first, I convinced myself he was just busy with work. I told myself that maybe he trusted me so much that he wanted me to have full creative control over our special day. But deep down, I felt a nagging worry when I tried to ignore. His lack of enthusiasm wasn't just about the wedding. It was about us. And it wasn't the only sign that something was wrong. The other woman in our relationship, Larry's mother, Kathleen Martinez, had always been a dominant presence in our relationship. At first, I admired their closeness. I thought it was sweet how much he valued family. But as time passed, I realized it was more than just a strong bond. It was control. Kathleen was involved in every aspect of his life, and, by extension, our life. She called him multiple times a day, giving him advice on everything from what he should eat for lunch to what kind of car he should buy. But what hurt the most was that Larry always listened to her over me. Every decision that should have been ours as a couple, where we'd live, how we'd spend holidays, even small choices like picking out furniture, was run through her first. I became the outsider in my own relationship, the third wheel in what should have been a partnership between two people in love. I should have seen the warning signs. But love makes you blind. The breaking point. Looking back, I don't know exactly when Larry started changing. Maybe he had always been that way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. Maybe it was the stress of the wedding, or maybe it was something deeper. His temper started surfacing in small ways. An irritated sigh when I asked him for his opinion. A cold stare when I brought up wedding plans. Then came the sharp words, the cutting remarks, the way he dismissed my feelings like they were nothing. And then the slap. That single moment shattered every illusion I had about our love. It was like the final piece of the puzzle falling into place, revealing an ugly truth I had refused to see. The man I loved, the man I thought would be my husband, was not who I believed him to be. As I stood in that silent room, my cheek burning and my heart breaking, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't love. And I could never marry him. His mother always came first. I felt like I was always competing with his mother for his attention. But I kept telling myself that things would get better. I believed that once we got married, he would finally put our relationship first. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 weeks ago, I had a day I had been dreaming about for years. Wedding dress shopping with my mom and sister. It was supposed to be a magical experience, something I would cherish forever. We visited several bridal shops, trying on dress after dress, searching for the one. And then I found it. It was the most beautiful gown, elegant and classic. The moment I saw myself in the mirror, I felt like a princess. Tears filled my eyes as I imagined walking down the aisle. My mom and sister were just as emotional, their faces full of joy and admiration. It was everything I had ever hoped for. Excited, I snapped a picture and sent it to Larry, eager to share the moment with him. A few minutes later, he replied, "It looks beautiful." For a brief moment, I felt truly happy. What I didn't know was that, right after he saw my message, Larry showed the picture to his mother. And that one simple action turned my perfect day into a nightmare. The nightmare begins. Kathleen, my future mother-in-law, was furious. She called me multiple times while I was still out shopping, but I didn't answer. I figured it could wait. I had no idea what was coming. Later that evening, I walked into our house feeling overjoyed and full of hope. But that feeling disappeared the second I stepped inside. Kathleen was already there. She had let herself in using the spare key we had given her for emergencies. She was sitting on our couch, her arms crossed, her face twisted with anger. The happiness I had felt just minutes before vanished. As soon as I walked in, she jumped to her feet and shouted, "You lied to me." I stood there confused. What was she talking about? She glared at me and said that I had promised her years ago that I would wear her old wedding dress. A dress that, to be honest, looked like it belonged in a museum. I was stunned. I had no memory of ever making such a promise. Maybe I had made a polite comment about it a long time ago, just to be nice. But even if I had, it wasn't some kind of binding agreement. Kathleen didn't care. She called me a liar, saying I didn't deserve to marry her son. Her words cut deep. I kept looking around, hoping Larry would walk in and stand up for me. But he was nowhere to be found. I tried to explain. I tried to reason with her. But she wouldn't listen. Her voice got louder, her words harsher. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. Feeling alone in my own relationship, I walked to my room, my heart heavy with humiliation and defeat. Even with the door shut, I could still hear Kathleen's angry voice echoing through the house. It felt like an eternity before I finally heard the front door slam shut. A few moments later, Larry walked into our room. He looked at me like nothing had happened, like he had been completely unaware of the chaos that had just unfolded. "Why is my mom so upset?" he asked, as if he hadn't heard her yelling from wherever he had been hiding. A wave of frustration and disbelief washed over me. Was he serious? Did he really not know? I took a deep breath and explained everything, hoping he would finally take my side, comfort me, support me, stand up for me. But instead, he sighed and started defending her. Larry said that years ago, when we first started dating, I had admired his mother's wedding dress and mentioned that I'd love to wear it. Maybe I had said something polite at the time to be nice, but there was no way I had actually promised to wear it on my wedding day. Still, Larry insisted that I was the one being unreasonable. He said his mother had every right to feel hurt. That night, I went to bed feeling more alone than ever. My heart was heavy with disappointment. I lay there in the dark, replaying everything in my mind. How had it come to this? How had the man I loved for 7 years chosen his mother's feelings over mine again? I tossed and turned, feeling a deep, painful realization settle in my chest. I thought about all the times I had put his family's needs before mine, all the sacrifices I had made. And for what? To be treated like a liar. To be made to feel like an outsider in my own relationship. A morning of heartbreak. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages from Kathleen. Each one felt like a knife to my heart. She called me selfish, ungrateful. She told me I wasn't worthy of marrying her precious son. Tears filled my eyes as I read through her hateful words. How could she do this? How could someone I had tried so hard to please turn on me so quickly? I showed the messages to Larry, hoping, begging really, that he would finally see how cruel his mother was being. That he would finally stand up for me. But he just shrugged. "She's probably just hurt that you don't want to wear her dress," he said casually. "Just give her some time to calm down." I stared at him in shock. Did he really not see what was happening? Kathleen wasn't just hurt. She was trying to ruin our engagement. She wanted to make me look like the bad guy. I felt anger bubble up inside me. This wasn't about a dress anymore. It was about respect. It was about support. It was about having a partner who would stand up for me. And it was painfully clear now, Larry was not that partner. I tried one last time to make him understand. I told him, "This is our wedding." But deep down, I already knew the truth. It would never truly be ours. The moment everything fell apart, I should have felt beautiful and confident in the dress I chose. After all, it was my wedding. To make peace, I even suggested compromises, wearing a piece of Kathleen's jewelry or using fabric from her dress in my veil. But none of it was good enough. Larry refused to budge. He insisted that I either wore the entire dress or I was ungrateful. To him and his mother, it was all or nothing. And I was starting to feel like I had no place in this wedding at all. A battle I couldn't win. The days that followed were filled with tension and endless arguments. Kathleen continued her mission to turn people against me. She sent me cruel messages, spreading lies about me, and even reached out to some of my friends to turn them against me. And Larry? He did nothing to stop her. If anything, he seemed to agree with her more and more. He made me feel like I was the problem. Like I was the unreasonable one for wanting to wear my own dress at my own wedding. I felt like I was losing my mind. The final conversation. Then came the moment that changed everything. The tension between Larry and me had reached a breaking point. I knew we needed to have a serious conversation, one that would decide if our relationship was even worth saving. That evening, I waited for him to come home. When he walked in, I was ready. We sat in the living room, and I poured my heart out. I told him how hurt I was, how unsupported I felt, how his mother's constant interference was tearing us apart. "This is supposed to be our wedding," I said. "Not a chance for your mother to relive her past." But instead of listening, Larry got defensive. "You're overreacting," he snapped. "This is about family. The wedding isn't just for us. It's for them too." His words felt like a slap in the face. At that moment, I realized just how deep his loyalty to his mother ran. I took a shaky breath and asked, "Larry, are you marrying me or your mother? Because it feels like you're more committed to her than to us." That question set him off. His face twisted in anger. He started shouting, accusing me of being selfish, of making a big deal out of nothing. I felt my heart breaking all over again. I looked at him and said the words I never thought I would. "I'm seriously reconsidering this engagement. I can't marry someone who won't stand up for me." Instead of hearing me out, he rolled his eyes and dismissed me, like I was throwing a tantrum. His indifference hurt more than I could describe. I turned to walk away, hoping to end the argument before it got worse. But then it did. Larry grabbed my arm, spun me around, and slapped me across the face. The impact was shocking. My cheek burned from the sting, but the real pain came from what it meant. The man I loved had just hit me. And in that moment I knew this wasn't love anymore. Choosing myself over him. I couldn't believe it. He had actually hit me. The man I thought I would spend my life with, the man I had loved for 7 years, had resorted to violence. Tears filled my eyes as I stood there, frozen in shock. My cheek burned, but the real pain was inside me. Larry stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him, running straight back to his mother's side. Again. I felt numb. The slap itself didn't hurt as much as the emotional betrayal. This was the final line he had crossed, and there was no going back. Walking away for good. I knew I had to protect myself. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and called my sister, Janet. She came over immediately. The moment she saw the red mark on my cheek, her eyes filled with anger and concern. She pulled me into a tight hug, holding me like she could shield me from all the pain. "You're coming with me," she said firmly. I didn't argue. Together, we packed a bag. I knew I couldn't stay in that house another second. My relationship with Larry was over, and I had to make sure he never hurt me again. As we walked out the door, I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. A part of me still ached for what I thought we had. But deep down, I knew I was doing the right thing, taking back my power. The next morning, I woke up with clarity. I knew what had to be done. With Janet by my side, I went to the police station and filed for a restraining order against Larry. I provided photos of the red mark on my cheek. I showed the toxic messages from Kathleen, proof of the mental and emotional torment I had endured for so long. The process felt both empowering and heartbreaking. It was surreal, standing there, taking legal action against someone I had once loved with all my heart. But I had no choice. I had to protect myself. Once the paperwork was filed, I made the difficult but necessary calls to cancel the wedding, turning pain into strength. The first call was to the venue. I braced myself for the worst, but to my surprise, they were understanding and kind. They allowed me to transfer the deposit to another event. I decided to use it for something better, an early birthday party. Something to celebrate my freedom and strength instead of mourning a relationship that was never meant to be. The caterer, however, wasn't as understanding. I lost part of the money, but at that point I didn't even care. All that mattered was that I was finally free, letting go of the past. And then there was the engagement ring, a symbol that had once meant forever. Now it just felt like a burden. Larry refused to take it back, claiming it was a gift. But I didn't want it. I wasn't his anymore. And I was never looking back, turning pain into something good. I decided to sell the engagement ring and donate the money to a domestic violence shelter. It was a small way to turn something painful into something meaningful. It gave me a sense of closure, knowing that something that once symbolized heartbreak could now help others in need. But even with the restraining order, Kathleen wasn't done. She went on a smear campaign, using social media to spread lies about me. She called me a selfish, ungrateful bride who had broken her son's heart. She even reached out to some of my family members, hoping to turn them against me. But my family and true friends saw through her manipulations. They stood firmly by my side. It was comforting to know that I had people who believed in me and supported my decision. Larry's desperation. Larry, on the other hand, was a mess. One moment, he was begging for forgiveness. The next, he was blaming me for everything. One evening, he even showed up unannounced at my new apartment. Tears streamed down his face as he pleaded for me to take him back. Seeing him, the man I had once loved, now standing before me as a stranger, made my skin crawl. I had to threaten to call the police before he finally left. And that moment only made my resolve stronger. There was no turning back. Finding strength in my support system. To move forward, I leaned on the people who truly cared about me. My parents, who had been furious when they learned what had happened, helped me move the last of my things out of the apartment I had shared with Larry. They also offered to cover any legal fees I might need, reminding me that I was not alone. Some of my friends were incredibly supportive, always checking in on me and making sure I was okay. But not everyone understood. A few people questioned why I hadn't just worn the dress to keep the peace. Those friendships became strained, but in the end, I realized it was for the best. This experience had shown me who my true friends were. Rebuilding my life. As the weeks passed, I slowly started to rebuild my life. The early birthday party I had planned at what would have been our wedding venue turned out to be a beautiful celebration. I was surrounded by people who genuinely loved and supported me. I laughed. I danced. And for the first time in years, I felt light and free. The joy in that room wasn't just about the party. It was a reminder of my strength and the freedom I had fought for. That day wasn't about the pain that led up to it. It was about the healing and happiness that followed. Turning a honeymoon into an adventure. Instead of letting the honeymoon trip go to waste, Janet and I decided to go together. We flew to London, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. What was supposed to be a romantic escape turned into an unforgettable sister adventure. We walked through the charming streets, ate delicious Italian food, and had deep conversations that made me feel whole again. It wasn't the honeymoon I had once imagined, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. A different kind of love story. The trip wasn't what I had once imagined, but it turned out to be exactly what I needed. A journey that celebrated love and resilience in a new, but equally meaningful way. When I got back home, I focused on healing. I started therapy, where I worked through the emotional scars left by my relationship with Larry. It was hard to face the truth, the red flags I had ignored, the compromises I had made, and the self-worth I had lost along the way. But each session helped me understand myself better. I learned to trust my instincts, to set boundaries, and to recognize that I deserved respect and love, things I would never settle for less than again. Letting go for good. Over time, Larry and Kathleen faded into the background of my life. Once the restraining order and our mutual no-contact agreement were finalized, Larry's desperate attempts to win me back finally stopped. Kathleen's smear campaign also lost steam. People saw the truth, and her lies no longer mattered. Then, something unexpected happened. Larry's father reached out to me privately. He apologized for everything, admitting that he understood my decision and wished me well. It was a small gesture, but it meant more than I could have imagined. Surrounded by real love. Through it all, my family remained my rock. My parents, who had been furious about the slap and everything I had endured, never wavered in their support. My true friends stood by me, showing up in ways that I will always be grateful for. Of course, some people didn't understand why I had taken such a strong stand. Those friendships faded away, but I realized that was part of the healing process. I had learned to surround myself only with people who lifted me up, reclaiming my power. The engagement ring, once a symbol of hope and a future, had become a painful reminder of what I had survived. Selling it and donating the money to a domestic violence shelter was one of the most empowering things I had ever done. It felt like a way to take back my power, to turn my pain into something that could help others. No regrets, only lessons. People often ask me if I regret anything. The truth? I don't. As painful as this experience was, it taught me some of the most important lessons of my life. I learned to trust myself. I learned to never settle for less than I deserve. I learned that my happiness and well-being come first. I'm not ready to date again yet, but I know that when I am, I will enter relationships with a clearer understanding of what I want and need. I'll never ignore red flags again. I'll always prioritize respect and partnership over anything else. Rediscovering myself. For now, I'm just focusing on me. I've started picking up hobbies I once put on hold. I'm spending more time with friends and family. I'm rediscovering who I am outside of a relationship. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free. A new beginning. I am stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I ever thought I could be. And for the first time in a long time, I feel genuinely hopeful about the future. Thank you for being part of this emotional journey with me. If this story touched you, made you think, or kept you engaged until the end, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please consider liking this video to show your support, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more powerful stories. Your comments mean so much to me, so feel free to share your reactions, favorite moments, or any feedback you have. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are stronger than you think. What do you mean Patrick will be the CEO? I'm the one who saved this hotel. My voice echoed through the newly renovated lobby, bouncing off the mountain-style decorations I had spent months perfecting. Mom waved her hand like it was nothing. Emma, honey, your brother is a natural leader. You focus too much on details, she said, like she was talking to a child. That's when Patrick walked in, hands in his pockets, with that smug smile he'd had since we were kids. Hey, sis, don't take it personally. Someone has to handle the daily work while I focus on the big picture. My name is Emma Roberts. I'm 53 years old, and I never thought I'd have to fight for respect in my own family's business. After 22 successful years in hotel management in New York, I gave everything up to come back home to Florida and save our struggling family hotel. The funny thing? I was the only one with real experience in the hotel industry. My younger brother Patrick had jumped from job to job, never staying anywhere for more than a year. 10 months ago, my dad called me in tears. The hotel was weeks away from going bankrupt. I didn't think twice. I sold my condo in New York, emptied my savings, and came home to help. The place was a mess. The decor was outdated, there was no social media presence, and the online reviews were terrible. I worked day and night, upgrading everything, new booking systems, fresh furniture, better staff training. I spent countless nights bent over spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers. I even used my connections to get us featured in travel magazines. And it worked. The Travelers Rest Lodge went from a rundown, 4-star hotel to the most popular spot in town. Our bookings doubled, and for the first time in years, we were making a profit. Every detail, from the locally made artwork to the improved guest services, was chosen carefully to create the best experience possible. But now, as I stood there watching Patrick smirk while our parents handed him everything, I couldn't believe it. I did all the work, and he was getting all the credit. I built this. But I realize now, it doesn't matter to them. The worst part? They're announcing Patrick's promotion at tonight's staff meeting. The same meeting where I was supposed to share our record-breaking quarterly results. I can feel the staff watching me, especially Pamela, our head housekeeper, who has been here for 22 years. They all know who really turned this place around. But like me, they have to stand here and pretend this is normal, like this is fair. Let me take you back so you understand how we got here. The Travelers Rest Lodge has been in our family since my grandparents built it in 1968. I basically grew up here, learning every part of the business. While other kids played pretend, I was helping Mom with check-ins and watching Dad handle maintenance. The hotel was my second home, and I loved every minute of it. But Patrick? He was different. For years younger than me, he never cared about the hotel. While I was in college studying hospitality, he kept changing majors, first architecture, then business, before dropping out completely to find himself. Mom and Dad never seemed to mind. "He's just creative," they'd say. "He needs time to figure things out." Meanwhile, I was working my way up in New York, from front desk manager to regional director at a major hotel chain. But no matter what I achieved, my family barely reacted. "That's nice, dear," they'd say. "But when are you coming home? When are you getting married?" It was never enough. Then Dad called, telling me the hotel was weeks away from going broke. I knew exactly what needed to be done. The place was losing money fast. The systems were outdated, the operations were a mess, and they had no real marketing. Online reviews were brutal. Stuck in the past. Needs major updates. Not worth the price. It broke my heart to see my family's legacy fall apart. I took a leave of absence from my job in New York, one that turned into quitting for good, and threw myself into saving the hotel. The first month was just cleaning up the mess, fixing broken equipment, updating the booking system, and training staff on customer service. I even used my own savings to replace the old carpet and give the lobby a much-needed upgrade. Every penny, every ounce of effort, I gave it all. And now, Patrick gets to take the credit. Every dollar I spent was planned carefully to make sure we got the best results. What really bothers me, Patrick wasn't even here for any of it. He was off in Miami supposedly networking, but really just partying with his friends. He'd show up for the occasional family dinner, throw out some vague ideas about modernizing the hotel, and then disappear again. Yet somehow, in my parents' eyes, his random comments were just as valuable as all the hard work I did every single day. I kept telling myself it would all be worth it. That once they saw the results, the better ratings, the increased bookings, the glowing reviews, they'd finally see my value. I should have known better. The past 4 weeks have been a nightmare. Patrick walks around like he owns the place, making changes without understanding how a hotel actually works. Just yesterday, he decided to cut our free breakfast service to save money, not realizing it's one of our biggest selling points. When I tried to show him guest feedback proving how much people love our breakfast, he just laughed and said, "Numbers aren't everything, sis." But what really pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked in and found him firing Samantha, our head housekeeper, who's been with us for 16 years. His reason? She wasn't flexible enough with his new scheduling system, a system that would have left us short-staffed during our busiest hours. I managed to step in and save her job, but the embarrassed look on her face will stay with me for a long time. I tried talking to Mom and Dad about it. I showed them spreadsheets, guest reviews, praising our improvements, even financial predictions for the next few months. Dad just stared at his coffee. Mom patted my hand and said, "Dear, you need to give your brother time to find his footing. He has such wonderful ideas." That's when I saw it. Driving home, I passed the old The Gales Hotel and Spa. It had been our biggest competitor for years before it fell apart last season. There was a "for sale" sign in front. I pulled into the parking lot, my mind racing. This place had so much potential. Better views than our hotel, closer to the ski slopes, and a bigger spa area. Sure, it needed work, but I knew exactly what to do with it. I sat in my car for almost an hour, thinking about every time my parents had overlooked me in favor of Patrick. Every achievement ignored. Every idea dismissed. Every bit of hard work taken for granted. Something inside me snapped, or maybe for the first time, everything became clear. Right there in the parking lot, I called my realtor. The owners were eager to sell. And thanks to my savings and strong credit, I was ready to make my move. I knew I could make it happen. By the time I got home, I had already scheduled a tour of the property for the next morning. For the first time in months, I felt excited. I didn't have to stand by and watch Patrick ruin everything I had built. Instead, I would build something new, something that was completely mine. Let them see what they lost when they chose him over me. The next few months were a blur of hard work. While Patrick was busy throwing parties at Travelers Rest Lodge, I was meeting with contractors, redesigning spaces, and hiring the best hospitality team I could find. I named my hotel The Summit. Maybe it was a little obvious, but I wanted people to know exactly what I was aiming for, something at the top. Word spread fast. Some people said I was being petty for competing with my own family. But others, especially former Mountain Pine employees, quietly supported me. At first, my parents tried to make me feel guilty. "How could you do this to your brother?" "To us?" Mom asked during one of our rare family dinners. I just smiled and changed the subject. Meanwhile, Patrick's bad management was starting to show. Travelers' Rest Lodge's reviews were dropping. Guests complained about poor service, broken equipment, and even dirty rooms. Within the first month, for long-time employees quit. I heard they had to lower their room rates just to keep guests coming. Then came the summit's grand opening, exactly 7 months after that awful day in the lobby. I'll never forget my family's faces when they walked in. Mom's forced smile barely hid her shock. Dad's eyes widened as he looked around at the packed lobby. And Patrick? He was furious. The local newspaper was there, taking photos and interviewing guests about Aspen Dental, Miami, Florida's newest luxury destination. Patrick pulled me aside near the bar, his voice low and angry. "You're trying to destroy us." I just smiled. "No, Patrick. This is me succeeding despite our family." The difference between our hotels couldn't have been clearer. While Travelers Rest Lodge struggled with basic upkeep, the Summit was making headlines for its eco-friendly features and high-end amenities. Everything I had wanted to do at Mountain Pine but was shut down for? It was now a reality here. Locally sourced food, a state-of-the-art spa, and a guest experience designed to be unforgettable. This time, no one could take it away from me. I had built exactly what I imagined. But success came with its own problems. Other hotels started copying our booking system. Some people in town, old friends of my parents, started whispering that I was tearing the family apart. Even some loyal guests from Travelers Rest Lodge felt guilty about choosing my hotel over theirs. The real challenges started as the Summit became more popular. Vendors I had worked with at Travelers Rest Lodge suddenly got pressured not to do business with me. My mom had a strong social circle in town, and suddenly some longtime family friends stopped meeting me for coffee. I even lost my seat on the local tourism board. Apparently, it was now a conflict of interest. But I wasn't going to let small-town politics ruin what I had built. When local vendors hesitated, I found better ones in Miami. When the tourism board shut me out, I focused on building direct relationships with ski tour operators. Every challenge only made me work harder and think smarter. Then came the biggest test of all. Mom and Dad showed up at my office one morning looking worried. The bank was threatening to take Travelers Rest Lodge. Patrick's mismanagement had finally caught up with them. They wanted me to come back. Not as CEO, of course. Just to help Patrick learn how to run the hotel. "We're family," Mom pleaded. "You can't just let the hotel fail." I looked at them, sitting across from me in the office I had built from scratch, and felt strangely calm. "I offered to help 10 months ago," I said. "You chose Patrick. Now you have to live with that choice." Dad tried another approach. "Think about your grandfather's legacy," he said quietly. "This hotel has been in our family for generations." "I did try to protect that legacy," I shot back. "You're the ones who handed it over to someone who treats it like his personal playground." After that, the rumors got worse. People called me the ungrateful daughter, the bitter sister, the woman who turned against her own family out of spite. Some days, the gossip hurt more than I wanted to admit. But every morning, I walked into the Summit's lobby, saw my vision come to life, and knew I had made the right choice. My team became my new family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who had left, fed up with Patrick's careless leadership. They understood what I was building wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something real, something we could all be proud of. The breaking point came at the annual Florida Luxury Hotels Awards. The Summit was nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel. Travelers Rest Lodge? It wasn't nominated for anything. I was sitting in the ballroom, surrounded by my team, when they announced our win. As I walked up to the stage, I spotted my parents in the back of the room. They had shown up without telling me, probably expecting to support our family hotel like they always had. But the look on their faces said it all. Mom was trying not to cry. Dad looked like he had aged 12 years. Patrick wasn't there. He had stopped coming to industry events months ago, saying they were just popularity contests. But everyone in that room knew the truth. The student had passed the teacher. The detail-obsessed daughter had built something even better than the family business they refused to trust her with. During my speech, I thanked my team, our guests, and even mentioned Travelers Rest Lodge, the place where I first fell in love with hospitality. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They caught the message behind my words. But what happened after my speech changed everything. A well-known travel magazine editor approached me for an interview. As we talked about the summit's success, I noticed my parents standing nearby, listening. They heard every word. I talked about my journey, how being passed over for CEO had pushed me to build something of my own. Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated, I said, loud enough for them to hear. That night, the editor told me they were naming the summit the best boutique hotel in the Rockies in their next issue. The same issue would also feature an article about struggling hotels, using Travelers Rest Lodge as the main example. When the magazine came out, it was like an earthquake in our small town. The people who had whispered that I was just being petty had to face the truth. I hadn't hurt Travelers Rest Lodge. Their own bad choices had. Looking back, I feel a mix of emotions. Part of me still aches from how my parents treated me, how they dismissed everything I did like it didn't matter. But another part of me, the bigger part, feels free. I'm living life on my own terms. I don't need anyone's approval. Every morning, when I walk into the summit, I see what I built with my own hands. The lobby is full of energy, guests chatting about their plans, staff moving smoothly with warm smiles. The smell of fresh coffee fills the air, mixing with the crisp mountain breeze that rushes in when the doors open. It's everything I dreamed of. The summit is everything I ever wanted Travelers Rest Lodge to be. Seeing it succeed fills me with pride. My team at the summit feels like family in ways I never expected. Many of them, like Pamela and Carolyn, used to work at my parents' hotel, but left because they saw the same lack of leadership I did. They've played a huge role in making the summit a success, and their loyalty humbles me. Pamela often jokes that, for the first time, her experience and ideas actually matter. I know exactly how she feels. Outside of work, I've started reconnecting with old friends. For years, I was so focused on proving myself to my parents that I let important relationships fade. Now, I make time for coffee dates and hikes, rebuilding those connections. Even some of the people who first criticized me for competing with my family have changed their minds. They've told me they respect what I've accomplished. I'm also finding my place in the community again. Hosting events at the summit has helped me reconnect with old friends and make new ones. Just last month, we held a fundraiser for the local animal shelter in our new event space. It was a huge success. Watching people come together for a good cause reminded me why I fell in love with hospitality in the first place, to create spaces where people feel happy and welcome. But it's not all perfect. There are quiet moments when I think about my parents and Patrick. As much as they hurt me, I still wish things could be different. Sometimes I wonder if they truly understand the sacrifices I made to save our family's hotel. Still, I've come to realize that I don't need their approval. My success, my happiness, they belong to me, and no one can take them away. For so long, I lived under their expectations. But now, I finally stand in my own light. Then, about 4 weeks after the Florida Luxury Hotels Awards, my parents reached out. They asked me to come over for dinner, just the three of us. I hesitated. I wasn't expecting an apology, but I was curious about what they had to say. When I arrived, something felt different. Mom greeted me with a nervous smile. Dad wouldn't make eye contact, fiddling with his watch like he always did when he was uncomfortable. Over dinner, they started with small talk. The warm weather, the summit's latest 4-star review. I waited, wondering when they would finally say what was really on their minds. I could tell they were leading up to something. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Emma, we just wanted to say, we're proud of what you've accomplished." Mom quickly added, "We know we haven't always shown it, but we do see how much work you've put in. The summit it's remarkable." I wanted to feel happy hearing those words, but instead, they felt empty, too little, too late. So I just nodded and waited for what I knew was coming next. Sure enough, Mom sighed and said, "Patrick is struggling. The hotel isn't doing well, and he's in over his head. We were hoping you could maybe help him, help us get things back on track. For a moment, I said nothing. I let their words sit in the air while I really looked at them. Mom, gripping her wine glass a little too tightly, her perfectly manicured nails digging into the stem. Dad, staring at the tablecloth as if it held all the answers. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm but firm. I offered to help a year ago, I said. I gave up my life in New York to save Travelers Rest Lodge. You chose to put Patrick in charge, even though you knew he wasn't ready. Even though I had the experience to make it succeed. You didn't want my leadership then. And now that everything has fallen apart, you're asking me to fix it? I shook my head. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. Mom opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand to stop her. I'll give you advice if you want it. I can suggest strategies, suppliers, even training programs for the staff. But I'm not coming back to clean up Patrick's mess. That's not my responsibility anymore. They didn't know what to say. Dad finally muttered something about understanding my position, but the disappointment on his face was clear. Mom looked like she wanted to push back, but for once, she didn't. Driving home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. Setting those boundaries wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I wasn't bending over backward to make my parents happy. I wasn't fixing Patrick's mistakes. I was choosing myself, my happiness, my future. Over the next few weeks, I noticed something change in me. Saying no to my parents gave me the confidence to set boundaries in other parts of my life too. I stopped over-explaining my decisions to anyone. Whether it was about work or my personal life, I no longer felt the need to justify myself. And that felt really good. I became more comfortable letting go of relationships that no longer made me happy. Instead, I focused on the people who truly supported me. At the summit, we kept reaching new milestones. Our occupancy rates were the highest in the region, and other boutique hotel owners even started asking for my advice. Meanwhile, my parents' hotel kept struggling. I heard they finally hired a professional consultant to help fix things. Patrick and I barely spoke, and I was fine with that. He never apologized or admitted what had happened, but I no longer needed him to. His bitterness was his burden to carry, not mine. The summit had become a reflection of everything I had worked for, my strength, my vision, my independence. And as the hotel thrived, so did I. One morning, I stood in the lobby, watching the sunlight pour through the tall windows, filling the space with a warm glow. A family walked by, laughing as they planned their day. At the front desk, one of my staff members handed a couple their itinerary for a scenic snowshoe hike. In that moment, it hit me just how far I had come, not just in my career, but as a person. For years, I had measured my worth by my parents' approval, by whether they saw and valued my work. But now I realized I didn't need that anymore. What I had built wasn't just a hotel. It was proof of my resilience, my creativity, and my ability to succeed despite the challenges thrown my way. The journey hadn't been easy. Letting go of the hope that my family would change was painful, but it also freed me. I no longer felt tied to their expectations or their judgment. Instead, I felt proud. Proud of what I had built, proud of the team I had created, and proud of the life I was living. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. The Regional Hospitality Awards was the kind of event I used to dream about attending. The room buzzed with excitement, filled with industry leaders, journalists, and hotel owners from across the state. As the announcer read the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year, I spotted my mom and dad sitting toward the back of the room. Their faces were hard to read, but I could feel how much this moment meant to all of us. Then, the announcer spoke the words I would never forget. And the winner is the summit. The room erupted in applause. My team cheered as I walked up to the stage, my heart pounding. As I accepted the award, I glanced at my parents. Dad gave me a small nod, and Mom's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was something acknowledgement. I had stopped expecting that a long time ago, but in its own way, I still appreciated it. After the ceremony, I celebrated with my team. My parents didn't come over, and I didn't go to them. This was my moment, and I wanted to share it with the people who had helped me get here. For the first time, I felt completely free. free from the need for their approval, free from the weight of their choices. Success wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, that I deserved this, that I was enough. And as I raised my glass with my team that night, I knew I had finally found peace. My name is Maud, and I'm 41 years old. For many years, I've worked in the sales department of a trading company, climbing the ranks through dedication and hard work. Leadership has always come naturally to me. Even back in school, I had a knack for bringing people together and guiding teams toward success. Now, I manage multiple team members, and my sales performance matches that of even the most experienced male colleagues. The women on my team trust me as a strong and reliable leader, and that trust means the world to me. From the outside, it might seem like I have it all: a stable career, professional respect, and a solid reputation. But when I step through the door of my apartment at the end of the day, I am met with silence. No warm greetings, no shared laughter, no familiar voices. Just me and a space still filled with unpacked boxes, marking the start of this new chapter in my life. Not long ago, I made a life-changing decision. After 18 years of marriage, I chose to separate from my husband, Jake, and for now, I'm living apart from our 16-year-old daughter, Jenna. It wasn't an easy choice, but deep down, I know it was the right one.
Let me tell you why.
The family I left behind. Jake and I had a history that many would call a love story. We were college classmates who reconnected after graduation, and after dating for 3 years, we got married. At first, everything seemed ideal. He worked in the sales department of a printing company before transitioning into a self-employed web designer working from home. I continued my sales career while juggling the responsibilities of being a wife and mother. Our daughter, Jenna, is in 8th grade. She has always been smart and independent, but as she grew older, something changed. One day, out of the blue, she snapped at me. "I told you to buy the moisturizing cream." I had forgotten and apologized, assuring her I would pick it up after work. But her response cut deep. "You're totally useless." I can't believe it. At first, I chalked it up to teenage mood swings, but her words grew sharper each day. Her once warm gaze turned cold. The daughter I had raised with love now looked at me with disdain, as if I were a stranger in my own home. Jake's behavior shifted, too. He and Jenna became closer, but in a way that left me feeling like an outsider. They made plans together without telling me, went out for meals and trips without including me, and even started making financial demands that seemed unreasonable. And then, gradually, even Jake's attitude toward me changed. Our conversations became brief, transactional. There was no warmth, no shared laughter. Just distance. The breaking point. One Thursday morning, I made breakfast as usual, hoping for a peaceful moment together. But instead, it became the final straw. Jake pushed his plate away, his voice sharp. "What the hell is this? I always tell you I want my eggs over easy. Can't you get it right?" Taken aback, I tried to keep my voice calm. "There's no need to be so upset over eggs, Jake." But before I could say more, Jenna chimed in. "And the soup doesn't taste good. Didn't I tell you before that I hate mushrooms?" I looked at them, feeling an unbearable weight in my chest. This wasn't just about breakfast. It wasn't just about teenage rebellion or a grumpy husband. It was about respect, about being treated as a person, not just as a wife and mother who existed to serve them. At that moment, something inside me clicked. I had spent years excusing their behavior, telling myself that things would get better, that it was just a phase, that I was overreacting. But the truth was undeniable. I was in a home where I felt unwelcome, unappreciated, and invisible. I had given them my love, my support, my time, only to be met with indifference and cruelty. Choosing myself. Leaving wasn't easy. Walking away from the life I had built for nearly 2 decades was terrifying. But staying in an environment where I was constantly diminished was even scarier. So I packed my things and moved into a new apartment. It's small, and there are still boxes I haven't unpacked. The silence here is unfamiliar. But for the first time in years, I feel a sense of peace. I am not just a wife or a mother. I am Maud, a woman who works hard, who leads, who deserves kindness and respect. I don't know exactly what the future holds, but I know this. I made the right choice. And I'm ready for whatever comes next. The betrayal I never saw coming. But they're good for you, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I had always believed that communication could solve anything. So, in that moment, I turned to Jake, hoping he would step in and say something to our daughter, Jenna. Jake, can't you say something? I asked, my voice barely masking my frustration. But instead of backing me up, he looked at me with a cold stare and replied, "What do you mean? It's your fault for not being able to do a single thing you're told. And you're supposed to be an adult." His words stung like a slap. I had spent years making sacrifices for my family, yet here I was, being spoken to like an incompetent child. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. I wanted to understand why everything had changed so drastically, but by the time I figured it out, it was already too late. One evening, I overheard Jake making vague plans to go out. This struck me as odd because ever since he started working from home as a freelance web designer, he rarely had any reason to leave the house. A nagging feeling crept into my mind. Something wasn't right. That night, I decided to follow him. My heart pounded as I watched from a distance, praying that my suspicions were wrong. But they weren't. At a cozy little cafe, Jake met a young woman, probably in her 20s, with a perfect figure and an air of confidence that made my stomach twist. I froze as I watched them chatting and laughing like old lovers. When they left the cafe, they walked out arm in arm. I felt lightheaded. My vision blurred with tears, and my body trembled with shock. I wanted to follow them, to see just how deep the betrayal ran, but my legs wouldn't move. The day I had always dreaded had arrived. For years, I had silently feared that Jake would leave me for someone else. I had struggled with my self-esteem, always feeling like I wasn't pretty enough, not good enough. Jake, on the other hand, was undeniably attractive, tall, charismatic, and effortlessly charming. Why did he even choose me? I used to wonder. Now, as I stood there watching him with another woman, I realized that maybe in his heart, he never really had. The shocking truth. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. So, I hired a private investigator to dig into Jake's relationship with this woman. Days later, I received the results. My hands trembled as I flipped through the evidence. Photos of them kissing, holding hands, entering a hotel together. The woman's name was Alyssa Farah, a 27-year-old employee at a cosmetic surgery clinic. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Among the photos, there were some that made my blood run cold. Jenna, my own daughter, was with them. Confused and horrified, I turned to the detective. "What does this mean? Why is my daughter in these pictures?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His answer sent a dagger through my heart. "It appears that your husband's relationship with Mia is not only known to Jenna, but also approved by her." I couldn't breathe. The air around me felt suffocating. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, knew about Jake's affair. And not only did she know, but she supported it? How had it come to this? What had I done to deserve this level of betrayal? I refused to cry. Not yet. Instead, I asked the detective to go further. I needed to hear it with my own ears. I asked him to record their conversations. Days later, I received the audio files. With trembling hands, I pressed play. Jenna's voice came first. "She's seriously annoying. She can't even follow simple instructions and then tries to play the mother card." My stomach turned. Was she talking about me? Then Jake's voice came through, calm and calculating. "Well, she is technically your mom." Jenna scoffed. "Why don't you just dump her already? Mia has been waiting patiently." There was silence before Jake sighed. "About that, Jenna. I'm thinking it's still too soon to think about divorce. That doesn't make any sense. Mia has been waiting, right? I've talked it through with her. But I just can't stand breathing the same air as that ugly woman." "Ugly woman."
He was talking about me.
"Same here," Jenna chimed in. "But she earns more money than you. That's the frustrating part.
My heart shattered.
You get it, right? Jake asked. Is that so? I didn't really know. Yeah, that's how it is. If I divorce her carelessly, I won't be able to use that money anymore. We've got to play this carefully. I felt like I was going to be sick. They had a plan. Jake wasn't staying with me because of love, loyalty, or even duty. He was staying because he needed my money. And Jenna, my own daughter, wasn't on it. So, we just pull out all the money we can, and then let Mia move in?
Jenna asked.
That's right, Jake said. I need to check if Mia can handle that kind of life. If not, I'll have to persuade her. I shut the recording off. The betrayal, the humiliation, the cold-hearted calculations. It was too much. I had spent 18 years believing I was building a family, sacrificing for the people I loved. And now, I had undeniable proof that the very people I devoted my life to saw me as nothing more than a wallet, a burden, an inconvenience. I sat there in silence, staring at the floor, feeling like the last pieces of my heart had been shattered beyond repair. Moving forward, that night I made a decision. I would not beg for their love. I would not fight for people who had already cast me aside. I would leave, not just physically, but emotionally. I would walk away from all of it, the manipulation, the cruelty, the heartbreak. I deserved better. And for the first time in years, I finally believed it. The final straw. I think Mia will be fine. She's so understanding. Beautiful women are just different, you know? Yeah, I know. I regret it so much. The biggest mistake of my life was marrying that ugly woman. Hearing those words crushed me. That night, I stood under the hot shower, letting the water wash over me as I cried, deep, uncontrollable sobs. I had spent years sacrificing for my family, only to be treated like I was worthless. But as the water poured down, something inside me shifted. Enough was enough. If this was their plan, to use me and throw me away, so be it. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't weak. Instead of letting them take advantage of me, I decided it was time to take real action. The weeks that followed were tough. Every day, I pushed down my emotions and focused on my preparations. I kept my plan to myself, staying silent and patient, waiting for the right moment to make my move. Graduation day. On the day of Jenna's middle school graduation, I felt nothing. No excitement, no pride, no sadness. Just emptiness. Ugh, I can't decide on a hairstyle. It's so frustrating. Who gave me this face, seriously? Jenna groaned, staring at herself in the mirror. She looked just like me, a fact she never failed to complain about. Normally, I ignored her rude remarks, but what she said next caught my attention. Hey, I need some money. Around $500 should do. I frowned. What does a kid need $500 for? And isn't today your graduation? Obviously. I'm going out with friends afterward. And I'm eating out with Dad, too. I hesitated, but in the end, I handed her the money. This is the last time, I told myself as I did. Jenna snatched the cash without even a thank you. Then she casually added, Hey, I'm going to get plastic surgery soon. I blinked. Plastic surgery?
Yeah.
I'm saying goodbye to this ugly face that looks just like yours. I can't wait for a total transformation before high school starts. She laughed, clearly expecting me to be upset.
Huh?
I thought you'd be against it. What a letdown. I sighed. It's your body, Jenna. Do what you want.
Exactly.
You know what I mean, right? With a face like this, of course, I want plastic surgery. It's your fault anyway. Her words stung, but I had no energy left to argue. Later that morning, I drove Jenna and Jake to her graduation. But as we neared the school, she suddenly spoke up. Dad, and I will get off here. You can just go home. You know I don't want my friends to see you, right? I gave a small nod. Of course. I didn't care. I had no plans to attend the ceremony, anyway. My escape. Everything was going exactly as I had planned, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I returned to the apartment and waited. A little while later, a moving truck pulled up and 4 men stepped out. All right, We'll pack and move everything out. Given the amount of stuff, it should take about 3 hours. Thank you. I appreciate your help, I said. That day, I left. I moved into a new apartment, leaving behind the past, the pain, and the people who had betrayed me. On the dining table of my old home, I placed the divorce papers, signed and final. And just like that, I was free, cutting ties for good. I had taken time off work and spent my vacation traveling to different places within the country. It felt great to have some freedom for once. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more if Jake and Jenna hadn't kept calling me nonstop. A few days later, I returned to my new apartment, feeling refreshed and ready for my new life. When I finally picked up one of Jake's many calls, he sounded nervous and anxious. You finally answered. Where are you? What are you doing? Just relaxing in my room, watching TV.
Why?
You sound worried. Did something happen? What do you mean, did something happen?
What do you mean by your room?
Explain yourself properly. There's no need to explain. You saw it, didn't you? The divorce papers. That says everything. No explanation is needed. Jake hesitated before speaking again. So, you knew? About your affair? Yes, I knew. There was silence on the other end. Then, he tried again. I have no plans to end our marriage. You know, with your income, you can't support Jenna on your own. I laughed bitterly. Tough luck. I'm getting a divorce. And I'm taking alimony, too. Who says I'm going to pay alimony? We need to talk about this calmly.
Sure.
We can talk. You can bring Jenna along if you want, but it doesn't matter to me. I didn't want to see either of them anymore. Before he could argue, I ended the call, turned off my phone, and cut off all contact. The final meeting. For our discussion, I chose a cafe, the same one where Jake had first met Mia. It felt like a fitting place to end things. Jake arrived alone. There was no sign of Jenna. She must still be recovering from her plastic surgery, I thought. Poor girl. Jake looked around, confused. Who's that with you? He asked, noticing the man sitting beside me. This is my attorney, Mr. Thomas. His eyes widened. You brought a lawyer? Of course. Now, did you bring the signed divorce papers like I asked? Jake crossed his arms. I told you I won't sign them. No matter how many times you ask, I have no intention of getting a divorce. I sighed. So, do you just want the money? Do you really think we can continue our marriage for that reason? Jake looked offended. Who said I'm after your money? Where did you get that idea? You're making assumptions about my feelings. I shook my head and turned to Mr. Thomas, giving him a nod. He took out his phone, pressed a button, and calmly played an audio recording. Jake's face turned pale the moment he heard it. It was a conversation between him and Jenna, the one from that day. His own voice echoed through the cafe. I don't want to breathe the same air as that ugly woman. If I divorce her too soon, I won't be able to use the money. Hearing those words again still made my heart ache. But this time I didn't cry. This time I was prepared. Jake clenched his fists. Recording? What the hell do you think you're doing? I stayed calm. I should be the one asking you that. Did you really use the money I gave you to go out with Mia? Jake opened his mouth to respond, but Mr. Thomas interrupted. Actually, let's go over the legal side of things first. And just like that, Jake's lies began to crumble. Just to confirm, you have no plans to divorce, correct? Mr. Thomas asked. Jake nodded hesitantly. Mr. Thomas continued. In that case, we will file for divorce through family court. We will also discuss how to divide the assets. The court will review the situation and decide whether the divorce should go through or not. He held up his phone. This recording of your conversation with your daughter is strong evidence. In my opinion, the divorce is almost guaranteed. Jake stammered, looking nervous. I sighed and placed several documents on the table. I came here today to talk about what happens next. I pointed to one document. This shows how much money I gave you, and when. This one is a record of all the utility bills I paid. Jake frowned. Why are you showing me all this? Ignoring his question, I placed another paper in front of him. And this is a record of money withdrawn from our joint account. Jenna's surgery was expensive, wasn't it? I glanced at the paper. Eyelid surgery, eye shape correction, double eyelid surgery, nostril reduction, philtrum reduction, creating tear bags, cheek and nasal bone shaving. The total cost was $50,000. There's only about $30,000 left in savings. There used to be $80,000. You've spent a lot, haven't you? Jake turned red. That was for Jenna. I can save up again. I clenched my fists trying to stay calm. Do you realize that most of that money was saved up by me? I took a deep breath and continued. I'm okay with splitting what's left in the account as part of the divorce. And I won't ask you to repay the money used for Jenna's surgery. However, Jake interrupted. However, what? I stared at him, my voice firm. I expect you to pay for the emotional distress I've suffered. Keep that in mind. Jake opened his mouth to protest, but I wasn't finished. And one more thing. Are you still in contact with that woman, Mia? No, not really. That's what I thought. I pulled out another document. I hired a private investigator to look into her. You might want to be careful. She has a criminal record. Jake's face twisted in shock. A criminal record?
What are you talking about?
She was arrested for fraud. She worked with the director of another cosmetic surgery clinic to scam people. Jake's jaw dropped. What the? I crossed my arms. She must have thought you and Jenna were easy targets. My condolences. Jake's voice shook. And what about Jenna's surgery? Did everything go well? I hope so. But if there were any mistakes, we might need to negotiate with the hospital. We might even have to sue. Some clinics try to cover up their mistakes and refuse to take responsibility. Mr. Thomas nodded. Yes, many dishonest clinics deny wrongdoing and refuse to settle. If something went wrong, this could become a serious legal issue. Jake's face turned pale. I picked up my bag. That's all for today. Send the signed divorce papers. You can send them directly to Mr. Thomas, since I won't be giving you my new address. As I stood up to leave, Jake suddenly spoke. Wait, please, one last thing. I turned to look at him.
His voice was weak.
Can you lend me some money? Jake looked truly pitiful. I didn't say a word. I simply walked away. A fresh start. I can't believe I ever fell for a man like Jake. The thought alone makes me ashamed. I left the cafe with Mr. Thomas, not bothering to look back at Jake, who sat there in shock. That chapter of my life was officially closed. Life after divorce. From what I heard, Jake and Jenna's life quickly fell apart after I left. Jake's salary alone wasn't enough to support them. Keeping up with rent and daily expenses became difficult, and they had to move to a smaller, cheaper apartment. Jenna even had to take on part-time jobs like delivering newspapers just to help make ends meet. Jake's web design projects didn't bring in enough money, so he was forced to take on labor jobs just to survive. It was sad, really, but he had to manage somehow. After all, he still had alimony payments to make. I agreed to let him pay in installments because there was no way he could afford the full $40,000 at once. His small business barely brought in enough money, and borrowing from a bank wasn't an option. I could have forced him to take a loan from a shady lender, but I wasn't that cruel. A call from Jenna. A few days later, I got a call from Jenna. As I expected, the surgery had gone wrong. She sounded frustrated. It was a total failure. My face still has scars, and I need another surgery to fix them. It's the worst. We met at a cafe. I hadn't seen her in a long time. She still had bandages on parts of her face. And Mia? I asked. Jenna sighed. She disappeared. You were right, Mom. She only used us for money. She stared out the window, lost in thought. She looked different, more grown up, more serious. Well, I have to go, she said after a moment. I have work, and then I need to finish my homework. High school is really busy. Good luck, I told her. She hesitated, then looked at me. Mom, I'm really sorry for everything. No need to suddenly act all polite, I said, shaking my head. I'm not giving you any money. She gave a small smile. I won't ask for it anymore. With a wave, she left the cafe, moving forward. And that's how I ended up where I am today. I don't have many regrets. In fact, I'm happy with my life now. Jenna is practically independent, and I have no feelings left for Jake. He was never anything special, just a man with a pretty face and nothing else to offer. I actually saw him the other day, working at a construction site. He was covered in dirt, wearing a helmet, looking exhausted. His once charming face was tired and lifeless. I barely recognized him. Making a living is tough, and he's finally experiencing the struggle he once ignored. He wasted so much money, and now he's paying the price. Looks fade, and without anything else to rely on, life becomes harsh. I truly believe that now. As for me, I'm doing my best every day. The future looks brighter than ever. It feels like I've hit the reset button on my life, and I couldn't be more ready for what's ahead. The small velvet box felt wrong the moment I picked it up. Too light, too empty. My engagement ring, the beautiful 4-carat diamond Paul gave me just months ago, was gone. I froze in my bedroom, staring at the empty space where it should have been safe while I showered. My name is Rachel, and I never thought my own sister would betray me like this. Mom, I called, my voice shaking as I ran downstairs. Mom, have you seen my ring? Did you move it? She looked up from her coffee, her nails perfect as always, wrapped around her favorite mug. What do you mean, honey? Isn't it in your room? The box is empty. I held it out, my hands shaking. I always put it there when I shower. Always. Maybe you misplaced it, she said with barely a glance at the box. You've been so distracted with all the wedding planning. Then, I heard it, the sound of Laura's laughter coming from the backyard. My stomach dropped. I turned to the window. There she was on her phone, twirling something in her fingers that caught the sunlight. Laura. I stormed outside, the screen door slamming behind me. What are you doing with my ring? I demanded. She turned, and I saw it, clear as day, on her left hand. My ring. The 4-carat princess-cut diamond that Paul had worked so hard to buy. Oh, hey, sis, she said with a sweet smile. The same one she always used to get out of trouble. Isn't it beautiful? Brian proposed last night. The world seemed to spin. That's my ring, I said. Don't be ridiculous, she laughed, but her eyes flickered away. Laura Howard, take it off right now. My voice was steady, but anger burned inside me. That is my engagement ring, and you know it. What's all this shouting about? Our father appeared at the door, Mom right behind him. Laura stole my engagement ring. I turned to them, desperate for them to see the truth. She's trying to pass it off as her own. Laura's lower lip trembled. Why would I steal her ring? Brian proposed to me. He bought this. Now, Rachel, Mom said gently, stepping forward and placing a hand on my arm. Your sister just got engaged. This should be a happy moment. I pulled away from her touch. Are you serious right now? That is my ring. Dad squinted at Laura's hand. It looks different than yours. The setting isn't quite the same. That's because she changed it. I was yelling now, my voice echoing across the yard. Call Paul. Call the jeweler. That is my ring. Honey, Mom said in that annoying, fake calm voice she always used. You're making a scene. Laura and Brian are in love. They're getting married. Can't you just be happy for your sister? I looked at them, Mom's dismissive face, Dad avoiding eye contact, and Laura trying to hide her smirk but failing. 30 years of watching them favor her, protect her, excuse her. And somehow I was still shocked. You know what? I pulled out my phone. Let's call Brian right now and ask him where he got the ring. Laura's face turned pale. He's busy at work. Perfect, I said, hitting the call button. I'll leave a message. Stop it, she lunged for my phone, but I stepped back. Fine, she snapped. I borrowed it, okay? But Brian was going to propose, and we couldn't afford anything nice. And you have everything. The perfect job, the perfect fiancé, the perfect life. Laura. Mom gasped, but it was too late. The truth was out. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to finally do something. To finally hold her accountable. Instead, Mom put an arm around Laura's shoulders. We'll figure this out as a family. There's no need to involve Brian or make this public. Laura made a mistake, but she meant well. Love makes people do crazy things. I let out a laugh. Sharp, bitter. Meant well? She stole my engagement ring. We'll replace it, Dad said quickly. A newer one. An even better one. That's not the point. My hands were shaking, my eyes burning with unshed tears. She stole from me. She lied about it. And you're still defending her. Rachel, please, Mom sighed. Don't be dramatic. We can fix this. I looked at Laura, still wearing my ring, still safe in Mom's arms. Something inside me hardened. I had always been the calm one, the reasonable one. But not anymore. You're right, Mom, I said quietly. We can fix this. And I will. I turned and walked away, their voices calling after me. They had no idea what was coming. But they were about to learn that karma has a way of collecting its debts. And I was going to make sure it did. That night, I stayed at my friend Betty's apartment. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from my family. I ignored them all. The next morning, I walked into my parents' house with a plan. They were all in the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. Oh, good you're back, Mom said, sliding a plate of pancakes onto the counter. We were worried. Were you? I asked, still standing. Or were you just hoping? They expected me to cool off and forget about it, like always. Laura sat at the table, my ring still shining on her finger. At least she had the decency to look uncomfortable. Sweetheart, Dad started, we've been talking and we think. No. I cut him off. You don't get to think anything. That ring is mine, and Laura is going to take it off right now. Mom straightened her back. Actually, we've decided to help Laura and Brian buy you a new ring. A better one. This way, everyone wins. I stared at her in disbelief. Everyone wins? My sister stole from me, lied to her boyfriend, and you want to reward her? It's not a reward, Laura said quickly. Brian loves me, and this ring, it just feels right on my finger, like it was meant to be mine. You're delusional. I turned to my parents, and you're enabling her. Again. That's enough. Dad raised his voice. We're trying to find a solution here. The only solution, I said, is Laura giving back what she stole and finally facing the consequences for once in her life. Before anyone could respond, my phone rang, cutting through the tense silence. Unknown number, I answered, turning away from their stares. Is this Rachel? A man's voice asked. This is Ryan from Crystal Jewelers. We have a situation regarding a ring purchase. My heart pounded. Yes, I'm Rachel. What kind of situation? A young woman brought in a ring for resizing yesterday. It matches the description of one we sold to a Mr. Paul Wall 4 months ago. She said it was a gift from her boyfriend, but something didn't feel right. We keep detailed records of our sales, especially for rings of this value. I put the phone on speaker and locked eyes with Laura. Go on. Well, Ryan continued, when we checked the serial number, it matched Mr. Wall's purchase. The woman gave her name as Laura and said her boyfriend was named Brian. But according to our records, this ring belongs to you. Laura shot up from her chair. You had no right to check. I had every right, I snapped before turning back to Ryan. Thank you for calling. That ring was stolen from me by my sister. She's trying to pass it off as her own engagement ring. The kitchen fell completely silent. I see, Ryan said carefully. In that case, we'll need proper documentation of ownership before making any changes. And you may want to file a police report. No police. Mom blurted out. We can handle this privately. Thank you, Ryan, I said firmly. I'll bring in the original receipt and documents today. I hung up and turned to my family. Laura's face had gone from pale to bright red. Mom looked like she was about to faint. Dad still wouldn't meet my eyes. Still want to pretend it was a gift from Brian? I asked Laura. Her face twisted with anger. You're just jealous, she shouted. You hate that I'm happy. That someone wants to marry me too. I laughed. You really think a marriage built on stealing and lying will make you happy? Mom slammed her hand on the counter. Laura made a mistake. But getting the jeweler involved and talking about police reports, that's too much, Rachel. We raised you better than this.
No, Mom.
You raised me to be the responsible one, the understanding one, while Laura got away with everything. Well, not this time. Please, Laura's voice shook. Brian will leave me if he finds out. You know how he is about honesty. I'll do anything. I'll pay you back. You should have thought about that before stealing my ring and lying to everyone. I cut her off. I grabbed my purse. I'm going to the jeweler. Then I'm calling Brian. You can't. Laura lunged, grabbing my arm. Mom, Dad, stop her. Dad finally spoke, his voice tired. Let her go, Laura. This has gone too far. But she'll ruin everything, Laura wailed. I yanked my arm free. No, you ruined everything. I'm just making sure the truth comes out. As I reached the door, Mom called after me. If you do this, you'll tear this family apart. I paused, looking back at them one last time.
No, Mom.
You and Laura did that when you decided stealing and lying were okay, as long as your favorite daughter got what she wanted. I walked out, shutting the door behind me with a satisfying click. My phone buzzed, a text from the jeweler confirming they had found my purchase records.
Perfect.
It was time to show my sister that karma doesn't care about being the family favorite. I can't believe they're actually defending her, Betty said, sliding a glass of wine across the kitchen counter to me. I mean, I can, because it's your family, but still. I took a long sip, the receipt from Crystal Jewelers spread out in front of me. You should have seen Laura's face when the jeweler called, I said. Like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar, except the cookie is a 4-carat diamond worth 20 grand. So, what's the plan? Betty asked, leaning forward, eyes shining with excitement. Please tell me you're going nuclear on this. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Laura.
Please don't do this.
I'll explain everything to Brian myself. Yeah, right, I muttered, showing Betty the message. She's just trying to buy time to come up with another lie, Betty said. You know that, right? The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Betty peeked through the peephole and turned to me, eyes wide. It's your mom. Of course it is. I stood up, squared my shoulders. Let her in. Mom stormed in like she owned the place, her designer purse swinging at her side. Rachel, we need to talk. Alone. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of Kim. Mom's lips tightened.
Fine.
Laura is devastated. She's been throwing up all morning, crying about how you're trying to ruin her life. I let out a short laugh. That's rich. I laughed. She steals my engagement ring, lies to everyone, and somehow I'm the bad guy. She made a mistake. Mom threw up her hands. We're trying to fix this. Your father already called the jewelry store. We can get you an upgraded ring. Bigger than the original. It's not about the ring anymore, Mom, I said. It's about Laura finally facing the consequences of her actions. By destroying her relationship? By bringing shame to this family? Betty snorted. The only shame here is how you're defending a thief. Mom snapped her head toward her. This is a family matter. No, I said firmly. This stopped being just a family issue when Laura dragged Brian into her lies. He deserves to know the truth about the woman he's planning to marry. But she loves him, Mom pleaded. She was desperate. You know how much she's struggled while you've had everything handed to you. Handed to me? I slammed my wine glass down. I work my ass off for everything I have. I put myself through grad school. I built my career. I found a good man who loves me. Nothing was handed to me. Your sister? My sister's a thief, I interrupted. And she's about to learn that actions have consequences. I pulled out my phone. In fact, let's call Brian right now. Don't you dare. Mom lunged for my phone, but Betty stepped between us. Mrs. Howard, Betty's voice was ice cold. I suggest you step back. My phone was already ringing. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3 rings. Hello. Brian's voice came through, clear and confused. Brian, it's Rachel. We need to talk about Laura's engagement ring. Rachel, please. Mom's voice cracked with desperation. What about it? Brian asked. Is something wrong? I need you to meet me at Crystal Jewelers in an hour. There's something you need to see. A pause. Okay, should Laura come too? No, I said firmly, watching Mom's face crumble. Just you. After I hung up, Mom stared at me like she didn't even know who I was. I never thought you could be so cruel, she whispered. Cruel? I let out a dry laugh. Cruel is watching your daughter steal from her sister and helping her cover it up. Cruel is letting Laura lie to an innocent man about something as important as their engagement. Cruel is standing in my home, trying to guilt-trip me into accepting more family betrayal. You've changed, Mom whispered. No, I said. I've finally had enough. I stepped past her, but she grabbed my arm. If you do this, don't expect to be welcome at home anymore. I gently pulled her hand away. That's fine. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who think love means defending theft and lies. After Mom left, Betty hugged me tight. You okay? I exhaled slowly, picking up the receipt, the proof that the ring was mine. Actually? Yeah. For the first time in forever, I felt like I was finally doing the right thing. Want me to come with you to meet Brian? Betty asked. I shook my head. No. This is something I need to do alone. But keep your phone on. Something tells me Laura is going to lose it when she finds out what's happening. As I grabbed my things, my phone lit up with a text from Laura. You'll regret this. I showed it to Betty, who raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a threat. I smiled, slipping the receipt into my purse. No. It sounds like someone who's finally about to face the truth. And I can't wait to see it happen. Brian was already waiting outside Crystal Jewelers when I arrived. His hands were stuffed in his pockets, his face full of confusion and concern. I had always liked him. He was honest, hardworking, and genuine. Everything my sister didn't deserve. Hey, he said, shifting nervously. What's going on? Laura's been calling me nonstop, but she won't say what's wrong. Let's go inside first, I said, holding the door open. There's something you need to see. Inside, Ryan, the jeweler who had called me, looked up as we entered. Recognition flashed across his face. Ah, Rachel. And this must be Brian, he said, his expression turning serious. Do you have the documentation I requested? I pulled out the receipt and the original purchase records, laying them on the counter. Right here. Brian frowned, stepping closer. What documentation? What is all this? I took a deep breath. This is proof of purchase for the engagement ring Laura is wearing. The one you supposedly bought her. Brian's face went blank. What are you talking about? Of course, I bought her ring. Ryan cleared his throat. Sir, this receipt shows that the ring was purchased by a Mr. Paul Wall 4 months ago. It was sold as an engagement ring for Rachel. Brian's face turned pale. He picked up the receipt, his hands shaking slightly. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, I said quietly. Laura lied. She stole my engagement ring while I was in the shower and then tried to pass it off as a gift from you. No. He shook his head. No. She wouldn't. The bell above the door chimed. We all turned just as Laura burst in, her face streaked with tears. Mom was right behind her. Brian, baby, don't listen to her. Laura rushed forward, grabbing his arm. She's jealous. She's trying to ruin everything. Brian's voice was dead quiet. Is it true? Of course not. Laura's voice trembled. I would never. The serial number matches, Ryan interrupted, pointing to the paperwork. And we have security footage of Mr. Wall purchasing the ring, if you'd like to see it. Laura's grip on Brian's arm tightened. Baby, please, she whispered. I can explain everything. Brian jerked away from her. Explain what? His voice was sharp now. Explain how you stole your sister's engagement ring? Explain how you lied to me about where it came from. Tears poured down Laura's face. I did it for us, she cried. We've been together for 3 years, and you never proposed. I saw how happy Rachel was with her ring, and I wanted that for us, Laura whispered. So you stole it? Brian's face hardened. You committed a crime and lied to my face about it? Laura turned to Mom, desperate. Tell them it's not that simple. Mom stepped forward, but Brian held up a hand. With all due respect, Mrs. Howard, I don't want to hear it. I've watched you excuse Laura's behavior for 3 years, and now I finally understand why she thinks this is okay. Brian, please. Laura sobbed. I love you. Love doesn't steal, he said, his voice breaking. Love doesn't lie. He turned to me. I'm so sorry, Rachel. I had no idea. It's not your fault, I said softly. He turned back to Laura. Take it off.
Now.
No. She clutched her hand to her chest. You can't make me. Ryan, the jeweler, cleared his throat. Actually, if you don't take off the ring voluntarily, we'll have to involve the police. Theft over $10,000 is a serious crime. Laura's face crumpled. Slowly, she pulled the ring off and dropped it onto the counter like it burned her. Ryan picked it up, inspected it, then handed it to me. The setting has been altered, he noted, but we can restore it to its original design within a week. Laura glared at me, her voice shaking with anger. This is what you wanted, isn't it? To humiliate me? To ruin my life? No, I said, slipping the ring into my purse. I wanted the truth to come out. Everything else? That's just the consequence of your own actions. Brian moved toward the door, pausing to look at her one last time. Don't call me.
Don't text me.
We're done. Brian, Laura cried, trying to follow him, but Mom held her back as he walked out. Mom turned to me, furious. Are you happy now? You destroyed your sister's relationship. No, Mom, I said, meeting her glare. Laura destroyed it herself. And maybe if you had ever held her accountable for anything, she wouldn't be in this situation. I turned to Ryan. Thank you for your help. I'll be back next week for the ring. As I walked out, I heard Laura sobbing, Mom trying to comfort her. But for the first time, I felt nothing. No guilt. No pressure to fix things. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the music they've been playing all along. 4 days after the scene at the jewelry store, Dad showed up at my apartment. His shoulders were slumped. His usual confident posture was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like defeat. Can I come in? He asked quietly. I nodded, stepping aside. He sat on the couch, looking around at the boxes I had been packing. You're really moving out? I can't stay there anymore, I said, sitting across from him. Not after everything. He nodded slowly. Laura hasn't left her room since that day. Your mother is beside herself. I tilted my head. And how are you, Dad? For the first time, he looked me in the eyes. Mostly ashamed of myself, he admitted. I've been doing a lot of thinking about how we got here. Before I could respond, the front door opened. Paul walked in, carrying coffee and bagels. He froze when he saw Dad. Then, without a word, he carefully set the breakfast down. I should give you two some privacy, Paul said. No. Dad stood up. Stay. Please. You're part of this family too, or at least you will be if you still want to be after everything we've put Rachel through. Paul stepped behind my chair, resting a steady hand on my shoulder. I love your daughter, sir, he said. Nothing your other daughter did changes that. Dad sighed heavily. Laura got fired from her job, he said suddenly. I blinked.
What?
Apparently, she had a complete meltdown at work yesterday. She started screaming at a client who was wearing an engagement ring. I crossed my arms. That's not my problem. No, it's not, Dad agreed, surprising me. Just like it wasn't your problem when she crashed your car in college. Or when she took money from your savings account last year. But we always made it your problem, didn't we? I felt tears sting my eyes but forced them back. You and Mom always told me I had to protect her, to understand her. Dad's voice cracked. We were wrong. We failed both of you. We failed Laura by never teaching her consequences. And we failed you by making you responsible for her mistakes. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Paul opened it and there stood Mom and Laura. Laura pushed past him, eyes red from crying, but moving with a manic energy. Family intervention, she announced. We're fixing this. Right now. There's nothing to fix, I said, standing up. You need to leave. No. She planted herself in the middle of my living room. This has gone on long enough. Brian won't answer my calls, I lost my job, and it's all because you couldn't just let me be happy. Dad's voice held a warning. Laura. But she ignored him. You've always been jealous of me, she spat. You couldn't stand that maybe Brian loved me more than Paul loves you. That's enough. Dad's voice boomed, making all of us jump. Laura, stop talking. Right now. She flinched. But Daddy. I said stop. He turned to face her fully. Do you have any idea what you've done? You committed a crime. You betrayed your sister. You lied to a man you claimed to love, and now, even after everything, you're still standing here trying to make yourself the victim? Mom stepped forward. Jeffrey, please. She's hurting. Of course she's hurting. Dad threw up his hands. Actions have consequences. Something we should have taught her 30 years ago. Laura broke down into sobs. I just wanted what Rachel has. Is that so wrong? Paul spoke up, his voice firm but calm. Then you should have earned it, he said. Instead, you tried to steal it. There's a big difference. I looked at all of them. The chaos, the excuses, the endless cycle. Get out, I said quietly. All of you. I'm done with this conversation. This drama. All of it. Rachel, please, Mom begged. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said coldly. Family doesn't excuse theft and lies. And family doesn't show up uninvited just to make more demands. Suddenly, Laura lunged forward and grabbed my purse from the coffee table. Where's the ring? Give it back. Paul moved fast, pulling the purse away from her hands as Dad grabbed her, holding her back. That's it. Dad's face was red with anger. We're leaving. Now. But Dad. No, Laura. He turned to me, still holding on to her. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. For everything. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to try to make things right. As they left, I could hear Laura's sobs, Mom's quiet attempts to comfort her, and Dad's heavy footsteps fading down the hallway. Paul pulled me into a hug. You okay? I looked up at him. Actually, yeah. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm finally seeing my family clearly. And I don't have to fix their mess anymore. Your dad seems to be waking up, Paul said. I sighed. Maybe. But it's too little too late. Some things can't be fixed with an apology. Paul kissed my forehead. So, what now? I looked around at the half-packed boxes, at the life we were building together. Now we move forward, I said. Without the drama. Without the guilt. Without Laura's chaos. And your parents? They made their choice a long time ago, I said. Now they have to live with it. 3 weeks passed. My ring had been restored to its original design. Paul and I moved into our new apartment. And I hadn't heard a word from Laura. But peace never lasts long in my family. I was sorting through mail when I saw it, a glossy wedding magazine with my name on the subscription label. Inside, a post-it note in Mom's elegant handwriting. Please call me. We need to talk. As if on cue, my phone rang. Betty's name flashed on the screen. Turn on your Instagram. Right now, she said, skipping the greeting. Hello to you too. I laughed, opening the app. What am I looking for? Laura's latest post. My stomach dropped. It was a photo of Laura in a wedding dress, standing in what looked like a bridal boutique. The caption. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best decisions. Wedding planning starts now. New chapter. Ring sparkles. Is she serious? I asked Betty. She's not even dating anyone. Keep scrolling. The next post was worse. A close-up of Laura's hand. Wearing a new engagement ring, smaller than mine but still expensive. The caption. When someone better comes along and shows you what real love looks like. Raising hands, sparkling heart, thank you for saving me from settling, sis. Winking face. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Against my better judgment, I answered the call. Did you see? Mom asked immediately. You mean Laura's delusional Instagram posts? I sighed. Yeah, I saw. She's not delusional, Mom said carefully. She's been seeing someone, a friend of your father's business partner. He's well established. You mean he's rich and desperate enough to date someone who just got exposed for theft? Rachel, please, Mom sighed. Eric is good for her. He's helping her get back on her feet. I let out a short laugh. Of course he is. And let me guess, you and Dad had nothing to do with setting this up? Mom's tone changed, turning sharp. Actually, your father refuses to meet him. He's still struggling with everything that happened. A knock at my door interrupted us. I opened it to find Dad, looking uncomfortable. I'll call you back, I told Mom, hanging up before she could protest. Dad shifted his weight.
Hi. Can we talk?
I let him in, noticing how much he had aged in just 3 weeks. The confident businessman I grew up with was gone. He looked lost. Laura's getting married again, he said, sitting heavily on my couch. So I heard, I said. To my business partner's friend, he muttered. Eric. He spat the name like it tasted bad. Your mother thinks it's wonderful. I think it's a disaster waiting to happen. Why are you here, Dad? He pulled out his phone, showing me a text from Laura. Daddy, please give Eric a chance. He's nothing like Brian. He understands me. Mom says you're just being difficult. Don't you want me to be happy? Dad sighed. She's doing it again. Manipulating. Pushing. Trying to force everyone to accept her choices without question. But this time, you see it. Too little, too late, I muttered. I know, he said, looking up at me. I've been seeing a therapist. Trying to understand how I let things get so bad. How I failed you both so completely. That surprised me. You're in therapy? Twice a week, he nodded. Your mother refuses to go. Says there's nothing wrong with how we raised you girls. He let out a bitter laugh. But there wasn't there? We created this mess. My phone buzzed. A text from Betty. A screenshot. Laura had posted another picture. This time, she was standing next to a middle-aged man who I assumed was Eric. The caption. When you upgrade from a boy to a man. Face blowing a kiss ring, sorry not sorry. Living my best life. I showed it to Dad. He closed his eyes, like it physically hurt him. She tagged Brian in it. I said. She's trying to hurt him. Of course she is. Dad exhaled. It's what she does when she doesn't get her way. Suddenly, he stood up. I'm selling my share of the business. What? I blinked. Why? Because Eric works there. Because I can't stand watching your mother and sister manipulate another man into their web of lies. Because... He let out a shaky breath. I need to start over somehow. I studied Dad carefully. And what about Laura's wedding? He let out a sad smile. What wedding? She met this man 3 weeks ago. She's putting on a show, trying to prove she's somehow winning. And your mother is enabling it just like always. My phone lit up with another text, this time from Laura. Hope you're happy with your boring life and basic ring. Eric bought me a real diamond. Guess some men actually know how to treat their women right. Winking face. I showed Dad the message. He read it, then did something I had never seen him do before. He cried. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so damn sorry. I watched as the man who had always seemed strong and unshakable finally broke down, and something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but understanding. Dad, I said softly. Would you like to stay for dinner? Paul's making lasagna. He wiped his eyes and nodded. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. The annual family charity gala wasn't something I planned on attending. But when Dad called and said he needed moral support, I couldn't say no. Paul adjusted my necklace as we stepped into the hotel ballroom, squeezing my hand. Remember, he whispered, we can leave anytime. I spotted Laura instantly. Hard to miss in a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Eric's hand rested possessively on her waist, and Mom hovered nearby, beaming as she introduced them to everyone. Rachel. Mom's voice carried across the room. Come meet Eric properly. Here we go, I muttered. Paul gave my hand a reassuring squeeze as we walked forward. Eric looked exactly like his Instagram photos. Silver hair, expensive suit, 2 white teeth. He extended his hand. The famous sister. Laura's told me so much about you. Has she? I smiled tightly. All good things, I'm sure. Of course. Laura giggled, pressing herself against Eric. I was just telling him how you inspired me to upgrade my life. Everything happens for a reason, right? Eric smiled at my parents. Speaking of reasons, Laura and I have an announcement to make. Dad appeared beside me, his face tight. Eric, baby, Laura said quickly, her voice slightly panicked. Not yet. We agreed to wait. I can't wait another minute. Eric clinked his glass, gathering everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, I have the pleasure of telling you that in 4 weeks, Laura will become my wife. The room erupted in applause. Mom rushed forward, hugging them both, but Dad stayed frozen beside me. For weeks. Paul whispered. That's insane, I muttered. We're having a small, destination wedding in the Maldives, Laura announced, her voice sweet and confident. Very exclusive. Family only, of course. She locked eyes with me. Well, some family. Dad's voice held a warning. Laura, she blinked innocently. I just think it's best to keep things intimate. After all, some people might not approve of my happiness. I raised an eyebrow. You mean some people might tell Eric about your history of theft? I spoke quietly, but my words hit hard. The color drained from Laura's face. Eric frowned. Theft? What theft? Nothing. Mom jumped in quickly. Just sisters being sisters. Eric, let me introduce you to the board members. She whisked him away, but Dad turned to me. I'm not going to the wedding, I said. Dad let out a deep sigh.
No.
This is wrong. He's twice her age. They barely know each other. He hesitated, then added, and your mother, she's already talking about how his money will solve all of Laura's problems. Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught our attention. Brian had arrived. He looked sharp in a suit, his new girlfriend by his side. Oh God, Paul muttered. Laura's screech cut through the noise. What is he doing here?
Dad, stay calm.
He's still my business partner's son. He has every right to be here. Laura stormed toward us, Eric following behind, looking confused. Daddy, make him leave.
No.
Laura froze. What do you mean, no?
She stamped her foot like a child.
After what he did to me, she whined. After what you did to him. I corrected. You stole my ring, lied to him, and then tried to humiliate him on social media. Eric turned to her, his face puzzled. What ring? Laura, what are they talking about? Before she could answer, Mom appeared out of nowhere, her voice smooth. Nothing important, Eric. Just old news. Ancient history. No, I said loudly, drawing the attention of nearby guests. Not ancient history. For months ago, Laura stole my engagement ring and tried to pass it off as her own. When she got caught, she had a public meltdown and lost her job. Eric took a step back from Laura. Is this true? He asked, his voice sharp. They're lying. Laura's voice rose hysterically. They're just jealous because you're successful and rich and old enough to be your father, Dad cut in, and desperate enough to propose to someone he's known for 3 weeks. Jeffrey, Mom gasped in shock. No, Brenda. I'm done pretending, Dad said firmly. He turned to Eric. My daughter is a thief and a liar. My wife enables her. And you, sir, are either very naive or very foolish. The room fell silent. Laura's mascara ran down her face as she looked around wildly, searching for someone to back her up. Eric, baby, don't listen to them, she pleaded. They're trying to ruin us, just like they ruined me and Brian. But Eric was already backing away, his face filled with disgust. I think I need some air, he muttered. No, Laura grabbed his arm. Asterisk, you promised me a villa in Bordighera. You said. Eric jerked away. Said what? That I'd save you? Fix you? He shook his head. I think I've heard enough. Without another word, he strode out of the ballroom. Laura collapsed into dramatic sobs. Mom rushed to her side, glaring daggers at Dad and me. Paul leaned in, whispering, well, I guess the wedding's off. Dad let out a real, genuine laugh. I hadn't heard Dad laugh like that in years.
Come on, he said.
Let's get out of here before your mother decides this is somehow my fault too. As we walked away, Laura's wails echoed behind us. But for the first time, they didn't fill me with guilt or obligation. They only reminded me how far I had come, from being the sister who always had to fix everything to someone who finally let go. The morning of my wedding was bright and clear. I stood in the bridal suite, Betty adjusting my veil, when a knock at the door made us both freeze. Rachel. Dad's voice. Someone's here to see you. I opened the door to find Dad, standing there with Mom. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile than I remembered. 6 minutes, Dad said softly. That's all she's asking for. Betty squeezed my shoulder. I'll be right outside if you need me. Once we were alone, Mom stepped forward, twisting her hands together. You look beautiful, she said. Thank you. I stayed near the door, ready to escape if needed. Laura's in rehab, she said abruptly. After the gala, after everything, she had a breakdown. A real one this time. Not just for show. I heard, I said. Dad told me. Did he tell you I'm seeing his therapist too? That surprised me.
No, he didn't.
It's hard, Mom admitted, her voice cracking. Looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing you've been the villain in your own daughter's story. That everything you thought you were doing out of love was actually hurting both your children. I didn't respond. I just waited. Laura's therapist asked her to write letters to everyone she's hurt, Mom continued. Her letter to you. She pulled an envelope from her purse. She wanted me to give you this. But she also said she understands if you never read it. I took the envelope, feeling its weight in my hands. Is that why you're here? I asked. To deliver Laura's letter? Mom straightened her spine.
No, she said.
I'm here to deliver my own apology. She took a shaky breath. Not in a letter. You deserve to hear it face to face. Mom, please. She held up a hand. Let me say this. I failed you, Rachel. I failed you every time I made excuses for Laura. Every time I put her wants above your needs. Every time I made you feel like being responsible and honest somehow made you less special. Tears spilled down her cheeks, ruining her perfect makeup. I was so focused on protecting Laura that I never protected you. Not from her. Not from my own bias. Not from the unfair burden we placed on you. She wiped her eyes, her voice breaking. And I am so sorry. My own eyes began to well up. Why now? I whispered. Because I finally understand what I lost, she said. My relationship with you. Your trust. The chance to be part of your life, your marriage, your future, your family. She let out a shaky breath. And because, for the first time, I'm not here to ask for anything. I just needed you to know that I see what I did wrong. The door cracked open.
Paul peeked in.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're almost ready to start. Mom nodded, quickly pulling herself together. Of course. I'll go find my seat. Unless, she hesitated. Unless you'd rather I leave? I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer outfit was the same, but her eyes were different.
Softer.
Humbler. Stay, I said softly. But Mom, this doesn't fix everything. She smiled sadly. I know, but maybe it's a start. After she left, Paul pulled me close. You okay? I glanced at Laura's unopened letter, running my fingers over the envelope. Yeah, I said. I think I actually am. Want to know a secret? Paul grinned. What? Your dad's been taking dance lessons for weeks. He's determined not to mess up the father-daughter dance. I laughed, picturing my straight-laced father in a dance class. He's really trying, isn't he? They both are. Paul kissed my forehead. Ready to get married? I set Laura's letter aside. I'd read it, eventually. But not today. Today was about moving forward, not looking back. Actually, I said, straightening my veil. There's something I need to do first. I found Dad pacing in the hallway, muttering dance steps under his breath. Dad. He turned, eyes lighting up. You look perfect. I smiled. Walk me down the aisle? He offered his arm, then hesitated. You know, all those years I spent making excuses for Laura, trying to keep the peace. I forgot what real strength looks like. He swallowed hard. But you reminded me. You stood up for what was right, even when it cost you everything. Not everything, I said, looping my arm through his. I gained something too, a father who finally sees me. The music started. Our cue to begin. As we walked toward Paul, I caught Mom's eye in the crowd. She smiled, hesitant, unsure. And I found myself smiling back. Some things couldn't be fixed with apologies or letters. Some relationships would never be the same. But standing there, surrounded by people who had learned the hard way what real love looks like, I realized something important. A happy ending isn't about forgetting the past. It's about building a better future, one honest moment at a time. Ready? Dad whispered as we reached the altar. I squeezed his arm, looking ahead at Paul. At our future. More than ready. I was in my dorm room when my phone rang. Seeing Dad's name on the screen made me smile. He usually called on Mondays, but today was Thursday. Hey, Dad. Jennifer, sweetie. His voice sounded different, tired. I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come home? My heart skipped a beat. Dad wasn't the type to be dramatic. What's wrong? We should talk in person, please. I checked my calendar. Midterms were coming up. I can come in 3 weeks. Is that okay? Yes, that's fine. He paused. I love you, Jennifer. Those 3 weeks felt like forever. I could barely focus on my studies, always wondering what Dad needed to tell me. The train ride home felt never-ending. I stared out the window at the familiar landscapes, my stomach in knots. When I finally got home, my stepmom, Laura, opened the door. Her face was tense, and she hugged me, something she rarely did. He's in his office, she said softly, leading me down the hallway. The moment I saw Dad, my blood ran cold. He was sitting at his big oak desk, but he looked small. His clothes were loose, his face pale. Jennifer, he said with a weak smile. Come here, sweetheart. I rushed to hug him, trying not to show how shocked I was by how fragile he felt. Dad, what's going on? He gestured for me to sit and took a deep breath. The doctors found cancer, honey. It's advanced. They don't think I have much time left. The room spun. Laura held me as I struggled to breathe. I'm so sorry, Dad whispered. I hope you can visit often. I want to spend as much time with you as I can. That weekend, we stayed together the whole time. Dad barely ate, but he talked more than ever. He told stories about my childhood, my first steps, my first words, the time I painted the cat purple.
And he talked about Mom.
Your mother was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, he said, his eyes distant. The day she walked into that coffee shop, I was so distracted staring at her that I spilled my drink all over myself. When Dad told these stories, Laura would quietly leave the room to give us space. Dad's voice always softened when he talked about Mom, about how she fought her illness until the very end. How brave she was, even when she knew she wouldn't be there to watch me grow up. I was 9 when Mom died, but listening to Dad's stories made her feel close again, like she was right there with us. Even though my heart was breaking for him, those moments felt special, like he was giving me back memories of her that I had forgotten. After that first weekend, everything changed. I started calling Dad every day between classes. Instead of visiting once a month, I took the train home every weekend. Each time I called, his voice sounded a little weaker. But he always perked up when I told him about my classes or life on campus. At first, Laura seemed supportive. But after a few weeks, something changed. The hug stopped. Instead of warm greetings, she gave me short nods. At dinner, she barely ate and wouldn't look at me. How are your classes going, Jennifer? Dad would ask, trying to ease the tension. Good, I'd say, noticing Laura's jaw tighten. I got an A on my psychology paper. That's wonderful, sweetheart.
Slam.
Laura would push her chair back, the sound of wood scraping against the floor, and storm off to the kitchen. In October, Dad started chemotherapy. His hospital stays got longer and more frequent. At home, everything felt worse. Laura stopped talking to me completely. The house was full of slamming doors. The kitchen, her bedroom, the bathroom.
Slam, slam, slam.
One Saturday evening, after spending the whole afternoon with Dad at the hospital, I came home starving. The house was dark and quiet, no smell of food, no pots on the stove. Nothing. I found Laura in the living room, scrolling through her phone. "What's for dinner?"
I asked.
She looked up, her face cold. "I didn't make anything. I wasn't planning on having to feed you." Her words hit me like a slap. "What do you mean?" "I come home every weekend now." "Exactly." She put her phone down. "You're here every weekend. If you want to eat, cook for yourself." I stared at her, shocked by her tone. "What's going on, Laura? Why are you acting like this?" "Nothing's going on," she said, her voice full of sarcasm. "I just think you're coming here a little too often." "My father has cancer," I said, my voice shaking. "He's sick." "Of course. I'm coming to see him." She muttered something under her breath and went back to her phone, completely ignoring me. I stood there for a moment, then went upstairs without dinner. Lying in bed, I heard another door slam somewhere in the house. I thought about telling Dad, but he had enough to deal with. The last thing he needed was to worry about the tension between his wife and daughter. After a month of intense chemotherapy, Dad was finally released from the hospital. The doctors were cautiously hopeful, saying his body was responding well to the treatment. As soon as I got the news, I booked my usual weekend train ticket home, excited to see him feeling better. The autumn air was crisp as I walked up the driveway that Saturday afternoon. Something felt different. There were more cars than usual parked outside. I recognized one right away, Raymond's sleek black Nissan. He never stopped talking about that car when we were teenagers. My stomach tightened. If Raymond was here, that meant Emma probably was too. I hadn't seen my step-siblings in over a year, and I was fine with that. Emma, being a year older, always acted like she was better than me. And Raymond, 7 years older, treated me like I was too young to matter. The front door was unlocked. When I stepped inside, I saw Dad sitting in his favorite armchair. He looked tired, but much better than before. His smile when he saw me made my heart warm. "There's my girl," he said, reaching for a hug. "How are you feeling, Dad?" Before we could talk more, Laura appeared, Emma and Raymond right behind her. I greeted them quickly and went upstairs to drop off my bags. As I climbed the stairs, I heard them laughing about something in the kitchen. The sound made me feel like an outsider in my own home, a feeling I thought I'd left behind when they all moved out years ago. I reached my bedroom door and froze. It was open, and inside was not my room anymore. My vintage movie posters were gone, replaced by Emma's fancy art prints. My purple bedspread had disappeared, replaced by a plain white duvet covered in at least 80 decorative pillows. Emma's clothes were hanging in my closet. Her makeup was scattered across my dresser. My hands shook as I stormed back downstairs. "Laura, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Privately." She followed me into the living room, her fake smile still plastered on her face. "Why is Emma in my room?" I try to keep my voice calm. "Why is Emma in my room?" "Oh, that." Laura waved her hand like it was nothing. "Since they're moving back, it made sense to give Emma the bigger room. You're only here on weekends after all." "That's my room," I said through clenched teeth. "It's always been my room." "There are 2 perfectly good guest rooms upstairs," she said. "Do you really want to upset your father over something so small?" Her smile never faded as she lowered her voice. "He's finally feeling better. Do you want to stress him out over a bedroom?" Her words hit exactly where she wanted them to. I looked over at Dad. He was happily chatting with Raymond, looking healthier than I'd seen him in weeks. My shoulders slumped.
Fine.
"Which guest room can I use?" "The small one at the end of the hall," Laura said sweetly. "Emma's things are in the other one." I bit my tongue and went upstairs to move my weekend bag. If you could even call a room, it was tiny, just big enough for a twin bed and a small dresser. The walls were painted that ugly beige color I had always hated. The only window faced the neighbor's brick wall. The next morning, we all sat down for lunch. Dad was at the head of the table, picking at his special diet food while the rest of us had Laura's pot roast. The silence was heavy, so I decided to break it. "So, Emma," I said, trying to sound casual, "how long are you planning to stay?" Emma looked up from her plate with that same smug smile I remembered from our teen years. "Oh, I'm not just staying. I'm moving back. Permanently." My stomach twisted. "Someone needs to take care of Dad," she added, tilting her head. "Since you're so busy with college and everything." My face burned. "I come home every weekend." "Weekends aren't enough," Emma interrupted. "Dad needs constant care and attention. But don't worry, I'll handle it. I'm happy to make the sacrifice." Raymond cleared his throat. "Yeah, I'm staying too. Got some remote work lined up. Figured the family should stick together during tough times." I glanced at Laura. She was watching me with a satisfied look, like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. My hands clenched under the table. I opened my mouth to respond, but then I glanced at Dad. He was smiling softly, clearly happy to have everyone around him. The words died in my throat. 3 weeks later, I was in my dorm room, working on a paper, when my phone rang. It was Aunt Anna, Dad's sister. "Jennifer, honey," her voice was shaky. "Your father, he's gotten worse. The doctors say you should come home." I didn't even pack properly. I just threw some clothes into a bag, ran to the administration office, and filed for emergency academic leave. The whole time, one question ran through my mind. Why hadn't Laura called me? Why did it take my aunt to tell me? When I finally reached the house, I knocked repeatedly. I could hear movement inside, voices, the TV playing, but no one answered. I knocked again, harder this time. 10 minutes passed.
10.
Finally, the door opened. Laura stood there in her silk robe, looking at me like I was some salesperson bothering her in the middle of the evening. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice cold. I pushed past her into the house. "I took academic leave. I'm moving back home to be with Dad." "Don't bother," Laura said, following me into the foyer. "He was taken to the hospital 3 days ago. He's on life support. You should go back to college, focus on your studies. There's nothing you can do for him now." I stood tall and squared my shoulders. "Actually, I have every right to be here. This is my house too." Laura's lips curled into a smug smile. "Don't worry, dear. It won't be for long." I didn't have time to figure out what she meant. I dropped my bags in the tiny guest room and rushed to the hospital. Dad's room was in the ICU. He lay still, surrounded by tubes and wires, machines beeping softly. His face was so pale, almost the same color as the white hospital sheets. I reached out and touched his hand. It was cold. "Miss Matthews?" A voice behind me made me turn. A doctor stood there. "I'm Dr. Jonathan. I've been overseeing your father's care." "How is he?" I asked. The doctor's face softened. "I need to be honest with you. Your father's cancer has spread aggressively. The chemotherapy isn't working anymore. You should prepare yourself for the worst." I stayed until visiting hours ended, talking to Dad, even though he couldn't respond. I told him about college, about my friends, about the A I got on my last paper. Anything to fill the awful silence, broken only by the beeping machines. When I got back to the house, Laura, Emma, and Raymond were in the living room watching TV. None of them even looked up when I walked in. Emma actually turned up the volume. I stood there for a moment, feeling invisible as always, then headed upstairs. The next few days were the same. I spent all day at the hospital, talking to Dad, even though he was unconscious. Then I'd come home to a house full of people who acted like I wasn't there. They talked around me like I was a ghost. Ate meals without setting a place for me. Closed doors in my face. One afternoon, I came home early because the doctors were running tests. As I walked in, I heard Laura talking on the phone in the kitchen. "Yes, I want a complete renovation," she was saying. "New floors throughout, knock down the wall between the living and dining room, redo the kitchen completely." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you seriously planning home renovations right now?" I interrupted. "While your husband is dying in the hospital?" Laura covered the phone's mouthpiece with her hand. Life goes on, Jennifer. We can't all sit around feeling sorry for ourselves. This isn't even your house to renovate. She raised an eyebrow. Not yet. But it will be soon enough. I stared at her as the meaning of her words sank in. She actually thought she was going to inherit the house. She believed that when Dad died, everything would belong to her. I didn't say another word. I just turned and went upstairs. Only after I closed the door behind me did I let myself smile. She had no idea. This house had never been Dad's to give to anyone. It had been Mom's house, passed down from her parents. And before she died, she made sure it would go to me. The deed was already in my name, had been since I was 9 years old. Dad had only been living here, paying taxes, and taking care of the place as my guardian. Laura had spent 12 years thinking she had married into a beautiful home that would one day be hers. Now everything made sense, her sudden hostility, moving her kids back in, planning renovations. She was already acting like she owned the place. But she didn't. I spent that final week at the hospital, watching Dad slowly slip away. The doctors said he couldn't hear me anymore, but I kept talking anyway. He died on a Sunday at 2:35 a.m. I was holding Dad's hand when it happened. Laura took over the funeral plans right away, acting like the grieving widow in charge. She barely asked me about anything, not the flowers, not the service, not even the obituary. The funeral was exactly what you'd expect from Laura, flashy and expensive. She booked the biggest funeral home in town, ordered huge flower arrangements, and even hired a string quartet. She stood at the front, dabbing her eyes with a fancy monogrammed handkerchief, while Emma and Raymond stood beside her. All three of them were putting on a show, acting heartbroken like it was a performance. After the last guest had left and the flowers had been cleared away, Laura found me in the foyer of our house, or what she thought was about to become her house. "Well," she said, her eyes suddenly dry, "I think it's time for you to pack your things." Emma and Raymond stood behind her, arms crossed, looking like bodyguards blocking a door. I kept my face calm. "I think we should wait for the reading of the will." Laura's eye twitched. "That's just a formality," she scoffed. "But fine, if you insist on dragging this out." The next week was hell. They slammed doors whenever I walked by, had loud conversations about how they planned to redecorate their house, left passive-aggressive notes about my stuff, taking up space. I mostly stayed in my tiny room, counting the days until the will was finally read. When the time came, Mr. Nicholas, Dad's lawyer, arrived at the house. We all gathered in the living room. Laura, Emma, and Raymond sat on the couch. I sat in Mom's old armchair by the window. Mr. Nicholas cleared his throat and began reading. "To my wife, Laura, and her daughter, Emma, I leave my collection of fine jewelry, including my late wife's diamond earrings." Laura and Emma exchanged pleased smiles. "To Raymond, I leave my new Mercedes." Raymond's face lit up. "To my beloved daughter, Jennifer, I leave the sum of $300,000. I saw Laura's smug grin widen. Then Mr. Nicholas folded the paper and stopped reading. Laura blinked. Then, with fake sweetness, she asked, "And the house? Who did my husband leave the house to?" Mr. Nicholas looked at her. "The house isn't mentioned in the will, Mrs. Matthews." Laura's face turned red. "That's impossible. Check again. The will must be invalid if it doesn't mention our primary asset." I couldn't hold back any longer. I cleared my throat. "Actually, the house isn't in the will because it was never Dad's to give away." Laura's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Emma and Raymond looked just as confused. "This was my mother's house," I explained, keeping my voice steady. "She left it to me in her will when I was 9. Dad was just living here as my guardian until I became an adult." The room fell completely silent. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me in shock. Mr. Nicholas awkwardly gathered his papers. "I should be going. My condolences again for your loss." Mr. Nicholas rushed out, leaving me alone with 4 people who looked completely stunned. Laura gripped the arm of the sofa so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "I always thought," she whispered. "I always believed the house belonged to your father." I shrugged, feeling strangely calm. You should have checked instead of assuming. Property records are public. The shock on her face was starting to turn into something worse. Anger. Emma and Raymond exchanged panic looks, probably realizing that their big plans of living here forever were falling apart. I stood up. I'm giving you 3 weeks to find somewhere else to live and move out. Their faces darkened. I'm being generous, I continued. Legally, I could make you leave right now. But I didn't want to cause trouble while Dad was sick. Laura suddenly snapped. We're not going anywhere, she shrieked. This is our home. No, it's not, I said firmly. It's my home. My mother's home. You have 2 weeks to figure things out, or I'll have to call the police. They stormed off, throwing me hateful glares. Doors slammed throughout the house. Angry voices echoed down the hallway. Things crashed against the walls. That night, I barely slept, half expecting them to try something. When I finally dozed off around dawn, it didn't last long. A loud crashing sound jolted me awake. I ran downstairs to find Laura in the living room, ripping the wallpaper off the walls with her bare hands. Shreds of pale blue paper littered the floor. What are you doing? I shouted. She spun around, eyes wild. I picked this wallpaper, she screamed, tearing down another strip. I bought it. I hung it myself. If you want me out, fine, but I'm taking what's mine. Stop it right now. I took care of this house for 12 years, she yelled. She grabbed a vase from the mantel, Mom's favorite crystal vase. I lunged forward just in time to catch it before she could smash it. I cleaned it. I decorated it. I made it beautiful, she raged. You lived here for free for 12 years, I shot back. You never paid property taxes. You never even had a job. Dad paid for everything. She didn't answer. Instead, she shoved the coffee table over, sending books and framed photos crashing to the floor. Then she ripped books off the shelves, throwing them against the walls. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The police arrived within minutes, their lights flashing outside. By then, Laura had moved on to the dining room, yanking down the curtains, rod and all. Emma and Raymond stood in the doorway, cheering her on. 3 officers stepped inside, taking in the destruction. One of them turned to Laura. Ma'am, he said firmly. What you're doing is a crime, the officer said firmly. If you don't stop right now, we'll have no choice but to arrest you. Laura finally stopped. She stood in the middle of the wrecked living room, breathing heavily, surrounded by the mess she had made. I gathered everyone at the dining room table, the only piece of furniture still standing. You're leaving.
Now.
My voice was steady. Not in 3 weeks. Today. Laura's eyes widened. You've shown exactly who you are, I continued. And I want you out of my house. Immediately. You can't just, Emma started. I can, and I will. I crossed my arms. Pack your things. Take what Dad left you in the will, the jewelry, the car, whatever. But if you're not gone by sunset, I'm calling the police again. And this time, they won't just give you a warning. They started shouting, swearing, throwing insults and threats. I didn't respond. I just pulled out my phone and started dialing 911 again. That got their attention. The next few hours were filled with angry footsteps, doors slamming, and muttered curses. Laura and Emma shoved their clothes into suitcases. Raymond packed up his things. They made multiple trips, loading everything into their cars. I followed them through the house, making sure they only took what belonged to them. Laura tried to sneak out with some of Mom's old silverware, but when she saw me holding my phone, she put it back. Raymond had already moved his precious new Mercedes into the driveway. Emma and Laura packed up their jewelry boxes, glaring at me the whole time. As Laura passed me at the door, she hissed, "You'll regret this. You're just like your mother, selfish and entitled." I smiled. "Thank you. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me." The moment their cars disappeared down the street, I called a locksmith. He arrived within the hour and changed every lock in the house. As I watched him work, I made a mental list of everything that needed fixing. Laura had destroyed the living room, shredded wallpaper, broken furniture, books and decorations scattered everywhere. The dining room curtains lay in a heap on the floor, the rod bent beyond repair. It would take weeks to fix everything. I picked up my phone and called Aunt Anna, my favorite relative and the only one who had seen through Laura from the beginning. "The vultures are gone," I told her. "Thank God," she said. "How bad is the damage?" "Pretty bad. I need to hire contractors to fix everything, but I have to go back to college." "Say no more, honey. I'll take care of it." I let out a breath. Once it's fixed, I'm renting it out. A proper lease with proper tenants. No more freeloaders. After hanging up, I walked through the house one last time. Despite the mess, it felt lighter. Like a shadow had finally been lifted. I ran my fingers along the walls, remembering how much Mom had loved this house, how she had made sure it would always be mine. The next morning, I left for college, handing Aunt Anna my keys and insurance information. As the train pulled away from the station, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The house would be repaired. It would help pay for my education through rental income. Most importantly, it would stay in the family, just like Mom wanted. Her legacy would live on. I never saw Laura or her kids again. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about how different things could have been if they had just been kind, if they had treated me like family instead of a burden. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. When my uncle sent me that video, my whole world turned upside down. There they were, my parents and my brother John, sitting around our old kitchen table in Dallas, talking about me like I was nothing but a burden. The bright Texas sun shone through the windows, making the room feel warm, but their words were cold. "Patricia only helps because she owes us," my mother said, her voice full of bitterness. "After everything we've done for her, paying the mortgage is the least she can do." John smirked. "Yeah, and she acts like she's doing us a huge favor." What a joke. The worst part? My father, the man who once taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework, just nodded along, agreeing with them. He didn't say a word to defend me. The video was shaky, clearly recorded without them knowing. But their words were clear as day. I watched it 4 times, each time feeling a mix of numbness and realization. For the past 5 years, I had been making most of the payments on their mortgage through my company, Divine Investments. They thought they were paying a bank, never bothering to check the details of the agreement my financial advisor had arranged. Each month, they paid a small amount while I covered the rest, over $300,000 in total, while they complained that I wasn't helping enough. Right after I saw the video, my uncle Anthony sent a message. "You needed to see this, Patricia." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They've been talking like this for months. I sat in my home office, staring at the spreadsheets of every payment I had made. The numbers didn't lie. My hands should have been shaking with anger, but they weren't. Instead, I felt calm as I pulled up the mortgage agreement. A small smile crossed my lips as I remembered the purchase option clause, a detail my financial advisor, Jessica, had insisted on including. "Just in case," she had said. At the time, I thought it was just a precaution, but now, looking back, I wondered if she had somehow seen this coming. The next mortgage payment was due in 3 weeks. For the first time, I knew exactly what I had to do. No hesitation.
No second-guessing.
I picked up my phone and sent a short message to my uncle. "Thank you for showing me the truth. Don't worry, I won't let them know you sent this. But things are about to change." For years, I had been my family's safety net, though they would never admit it. When the housing market crashed in Dallas 5 years ago, my parents were on the verge of losing their home. They were drowning in debt, desperate for a way out. I was 28 years old, already thriving in my career as a software development manager. It was ironic, really. My parents had never supported my career choice. "Software isn't a career for a woman," my mother would say, shaking her head in disapproval. "Your brother John is the one with real business sense." Yet, the same John, my parents' golden child, had nearly bankrupted the family's real estate business within 3 years of taking over. When they needed help with the mortgage, I went to Jessica, my financial advisor. She had a smart, clean solution. Start an LLC. Buy the house through it. Let them believe they're still paying a bank. That way, you protect yourself legally while helping them. At the time, it seemed perfect. I could keep their home intact without dealing with their pride. So, Divine Investments LLC became their mortgage holder. Every month, my parents made their small payments, thinking they were dealing with a faceless lender, while I covered the bulk of the cost. They stayed in their home. They kept their dignity. I kept my family safe. The only person who knew the truth was Uncle Anthony. He had overheard a conversation between Jessica and me at a family gathering. "You're too good to them, Patricia," he had told me. "They don't deserve your kindness." I had defended them. "They're my family," I had said. "They may not understand my choices, but they've always given me a home." But now, as I watched the video for the 5th time, I saw the truth I had refused to accept. Their words echoed in my mind. "She owes us." What a joke. The least she can do. Each phrase was like a knife, twisting deeper. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as an obligation, someone to use and discard when convenient. But that was about to change. I opened my laptop and logged into Divine Investments LLC's account. The next mortgage payment was due on the 16th, just 3 weeks away. For the past 5 years, my parents had never missed a payment. Every month, like clockwork, they transferred their small portion, believing they were paying a bank. Meanwhile, I quietly covered the rest.
But now
that I knew how they really felt about me, I had no intention of paying the difference this time. Let them face the consequences of their ingratitude. Let them deal with the real bank, for once. They had no idea that their so-called worthless burden of a daughter was actually their landlord. The thought brought a smirk to my face. Sometimes karma needs a little push. The truth keeps coming. I thought the video was bad enough. But then Uncle Anthony sent me more proof the next day, screenshots from a family group chat. A chat I had been deliberately excluded from. It had been created 7 months ago and was appropriately named Family Finances. Each message was like a fresh stab to the heart. "John, Patricia thinks she's so special with her fancy tech job. She barely helps with the mortgage while I'm here every day running Dad's business." I clenched my fists. Barely helps? Then, my mother's response made my blood turn to ice. "Mom, we should ask her for more money. She's single with no kids. What else does she spend it on? After all we sacrificed to raise her, she can't even properly support her family." I sat there, staring at the screen, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. My hands shook as I pulled up my financial records. I started calculating. Over the last 5 years, I had contributed $370,843 toward their mortgage through Divine Investments LLC. And them? $90,500. That was all they had actually paid. I had been covering an extra $10,500 every single month. And they had the nerve to call me selfish? To say I wasn't helping enough? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A message from my mother. "Mom, sweetie, could you come to dinner this Friday? We need to discuss something important." I didn't need to ask what this important discussion was about. They were going to ask for more money. They would sit across from me, pretending to care, guilt-tripping me into giving more, probably with fake concern and manipulative sighs sprinkled in for effect. The thought of sitting at that dinner table, pretending I didn't know the truth, made my stomach turn. A plan takes shape. I called Jessica, my financial advisor. "I need to know my options with the purchase agreement," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "I had a feeling you might ask about this. Remember that clause we included?" she continued. "If they miss a payment, Divine Investments can immediately exercise the purchase option. The house would legally belong to you, and they would become month-to-month tenants." I felt a shift inside me. "And if they're late with rent?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Then standard Texas eviction laws apply," Jessica confirmed. "You'd be within your rights to give them notice." There was another pause. "Patricia, are you sure you want to go this route?" I exhaled slowly, staring at my laptop screen, where the mortgage payment deadline blinked back at me. For 5 years, I had given them everything, without recognition, without gratitude, without so much as a thank you. They thought I was obligated to support them. They thought I was weak. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I thought about all the years they had looked down on me. All the times they treated me like an ATM, always ready to hand over money while they mocked me behind my back. I thought about how John ran our father's business into the ground, yet they still praised his so-called business skills. I thought about every snide remark about my career, my life choices, and my supposed duty to support them. I took a deep breath and replied, my voice steady. Yes, I'm sure. But I wouldn't tell them anything yet. Let them believe everything was normal. I picked up my phone and texted my mother back. Of course, I'll come to dinner. Looking forward to it. The heart emoji felt ironic, but necessary. After all, they had taught me well. Sometimes, the best revenge is keeping a perfect poker face. The next mortgage payment was due in 15 days. And for the first time since this arrangement began, I wouldn't be bailing them out. Friday dinner, a test of patience. I arrived at their Dallas home right at 7 p.m., just as the sun was setting. The sky was painted in deep shades of orange and purple, the desert glowing in the fading light. The house, my house, technically looked just like it had for the past 21 years. The warm smell of my mother's lasagna filled the air, a clear attempt to remind me of happier times. Patricia, sweetheart. My mother rushed over to hug me, her designer bracelet catching the light. It was new, probably bought with money they should have used for the mortgage, which was due in 10 days. At the dining table, John sat back in his chair, looking smug as ever in his crisp button-down shirt.
Hey, sis.
Glad you could make time for your family. I smiled, remembering his messages mocking me for barely helping. If only he knew that his entire lifestyle depended on my generosity. I always have time for family, I said, the irony heavy in my voice. My father stepped out of his study, reading glasses perched on his nose, flipping through some papers. I caught a quick glance. Bank statements. I nearly laughed. They were getting ready to ask for more money. Dinner hadn't even started, and I already knew exactly how this conversation would go. The pitch begins. Before I could take a bite, my mother set down the lasagna dish and gave me a practiced smile. Before we eat, she said sweetly, we wanted to talk to you about something important. She glanced at my father. He nodded, encouraging her to continue. I picked up my fork and served myself a portion, acting completely unbothered. Of course, I said casually. What's on your mind? John cleared his throat, shifting in his seat. Well, as you know, Dad's business has been struggling. The real estate market isn't what it used to be. I took a slow bite, chewing thoughtfully. The business had been struggling ever since John took over. Meanwhile, the Dallas market was actually doing better than ever. But I didn't say a word. We've been thinking, my mother continued, reaching across the table to gently hold my hand, about how blessed we are to have such a successful daughter. Here it comes. Your father and I sacrificed so much to give you a good education. I swallowed my food and set down my fork. I already knew exactly where this conversation was heading. And this time, I wasn't playing their game. I watched my mother carefully, seeing her actions in a new light. The gentle touch on my hand, the reminder of their sacrifices. It was all part of the act. Carefully planned. The mortgage payment has become quite a burden, my father said, his voice carrying that familiar tone of authority. The same tone he used when he wanted to make me feel small. And, with you doing so well in your computer work, software development, I corrected without thinking. Not that they had ever bothered to learn the difference. Right, he said, waving his hand dismissively. Well, we were thinking maybe you could help more with the monthly payments. After all, this is your family home too. If only they knew how much of it was already mine. We're only asking for an extra $4,000 a month, my mother added quickly. It's really not much, considering your salary. I took another slow bite of lasagna, using the moment to keep my expression neutral. They wanted $4,000 more, on top of what I was already secretly paying. They had no idea I was covering $10,500 a month. The audacity was almost impressive. I'll think about it, I said finally, keeping my tone even. Times are a bit uncertain right now. John scoffed. Uncertain?
Please. We all know you're doing fine.
Unlike some of us who are actually working hard to keep this family's legacy alive. I smiled. Not because of his words, but because I was thinking about the bank notification they'd be getting when their mortgage payment bounced next week. You're right, John, I said smoothly. Sometimes, we all get exactly what we deserve. The truth behind closed doors. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead, I took a slow detour past my father's study. The door was slightly open. Inside, I could hear hushed voices. I paused, my heart pounding, as their words drifted out. She's not going to help, John said, his voice sharp with frustration. Did you see how she just sat there, acting all superior with her tech money while our business is struggling? Patience, my father replied. We have another option. My stomach tightened. Remember those investment documents I found in her cloud storage? My father continued. When she used our Wi-Fi last month? My blood ran cold. They had snooped through my files. During my last visit, I had carelessly connected to their Wi-Fi. My cloud storage must have synced automatically. She's been hiding money from us, my father said. In some company called Divine Investments. My breath caught in my throat. They knew. I looked it up, he continued. It's a real LLC, and it's doing very well. She's been stashing money there instead of helping her family. I raised a snake. My mother's voice cut in, full of resentment. We'll give her one more chance to help voluntarily, she added. If not, I'll remind her about that time in college when she took money from your business account for tuition. I nearly laughed out loud. The money they were talking about? I had borrowed it with my father's permission because their check for my tuition had bounced, and I had paid it back within a month. With interest. They thought they had leverage over me. They had no idea what was coming. I had emails proving everything. Their pathetic attempt at blackmail was as desperate as it was ridiculous. And if that doesn't work, John added, we can always reach out to her company's HR department. Ask some questions about her mental stability, maybe suggest she's been using company resources for personal projects. That would get their attention. A cold chill ran through me. The way they casually talked about destroying my career made my stomach turn. These people weren't family. They were parasites, wearing family masks. I silently slipped back to the bathroom, flushed the toilet to make it seem like I'd actually used it, then walked back to the dining room as if nothing had happened. They followed moments later, all wearing their practiced, fake smiles. The perfect timing. Patricia, dear, my mother said sweetly. Have you thought about helping more with the mortgage? I met her gaze without blinking. Actually, I have, I said calmly. You're right. Family should help family. I'll have an answer for you in about 9 days. The timing wasn't random. Their mortgage payment was due in 9 days. And I knew exactly what would happen when they missed it. Divine Investments would finally reveal who really owned their house. John frowned. Why such a specific timeline? I stood up, grabbing my purse. Just need to check some things with my financial advisor, I said smoothly. You understand, right? Being careful with money is just good business sense. I smiled at John as I threw their favorite phrase back at him. My mother walked me to the door, pulling me into one of her calculated hugs. We knew you'd understand, sweetheart. Family always comes first. I smiled. Yes, I said, thinking about the eviction notice I had already drafted. Family always gets exactly what they deserve. Time for the final act. As I drove home, I called Uncle Anthony. You were right about them, I said as soon as he answered. But don't worry. I'm done playing the silent partner in their little drama. It's time for the final act. The next week felt painfully slow. My family kept up the pressure, sending daily texts about their urgent financial situation. Each message only made me more certain of my decision. I forwarded everything to Jessica, my financial advisor, who was helping me prepare for the final confrontation. The paperwork is ready, Jessica confirmed during our meeting, for days before their payment was due. Once they miss the payment, Divine Investments can immediately take ownership of the house. And just in case, I've prepared the eviction notices. I nodded, reviewing the documents. And you're sure everything is legally solid? They can't fight this. Jessica smiled. They signed the agreement 5 years ago, Patricia. Your father barely read it. He was too desperate for the bailout. Everything is perfectly legal. The last pathetic attempt. That evening, John tried one last manipulation tactic. I saw his name pop up on my phone. John. Hey, sis. Just heard from a friend in tech recruitment. Seems like some companies are doing layoffs. Must be scary for you. I rolled my eyes before I even finished reading. John, good thing you have family to fall back on. Speaking of which, about that help we discussed, I almost laughed out loud. The manipulation was so obvious. It was almost comical. They really thought I was still playing their game. They had no idea. By the time they realized what was happening, it would be far too late. The next day, I met Uncle Anthony for coffee and showed him John's message. He sighed, shaking his head. They never change. Your aunt and I watched them do this to everyone in the family, he continued. That's why we distanced ourselves years ago. I took a sip of my coffee. Did you know they went through my files when I visited? Not surprised, he said. They did the same thing to your cousin last year when she stayed with them. They're always looking for something they can use as leverage. He set his cup down and looked at me seriously. Are you ready for the fallout? They won't take this well. I thought about it. The threats to contact my company's HR. The blackmail attempts. The years of using me while mocking me behind my back. I met his gaze. I'm ready. They made their choice. Now they'll deal with the consequences. The final countdown. 3 days before the payment was due, my mother called. Patricia, we need your answer about the mortgage help, she said. Times are tough, and family needs to stick together. I kept my voice calm. Don't worry, Mom. Everything will be clear very soon. That night, I got an email from their bank. They had tried to transfer money to Divine Investments, but the payment had bounced. Their account was already overdrawn. I forwarded the email to Jessica, my financial advisor. Her reply came quickly. Here we go. Want me to start the proceedings tomorrow? I thought about that lasagna dinner. Their smug faces. Their casual discussion of ruining my career. I thought about the years of manipulation, the constant demands, the never-ending ingratitude. I typed back. No. Let them wait until the payment officially fails. Let them spend the next 3 days thinking everything is fine. They taught me well. Timing is everything. Then, I opened my laptop and started writing an email to my company's HR department. I documented everything, the threats, the blackmail attempts, the screenshots Uncle Anthony had gathered. Better to be one step ahead of their inevitable attack. The end was in sight. And I wasn't leaving anything to chance. The moment of truth. The payment deadline came and went. At exactly 10 a.m., Divine Investments' automated system sent out its default notice. I sat back, watching my phone, counting down the seconds until the inevitable call. It took exactly 18 minutes. My phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I answered. Her voice was frantic. Patricia, something's wrong with our mortgage payment. The bank says we defaulted, but that's impossible. We need your help immediately. I took a slow breath, keeping my tone calm. Actually, Mom, Divine Investments isn't a bank. It's an LLC. What does that have to do with anything? She snapped. It's my LLC, I clarified. To be specific, I own it. Silence. Complete. Utter. Silence. Then, finally, in a barely audible whisper, what? I smiled. Check your email. A rustling sound, then a beep as she opened her inbox. You'll find a notice explaining that, due to your default, Divine Investments is exercising its purchase option. The house is now legally mine. Your status has been changed to month-to-month tenants. The sound of pure shock filled the silence. Then she stammered. This is a joke. I let my voice drop to icy calm. No joke. I've been paying most of your mortgage for 5 years, I said, my voice calm. All while you mocked me behind my back. Called me a burden. Planned to blackmail me. Threatened my career. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the call. How did you? My mother started. Uncle Anthony showed me the video. I cut in. He showed me everything. I let that sink in for a moment before continuing. Now, about your tenancy. Your first rent payment is due in 31 days. I suggest you start looking for a new place to live. Suddenly, my father's voice broke in. They had put me on speakerphone. You ungrateful. Careful, I interrupted smoothly. Is that any way to talk to your landlord? Silence. The eviction notice is ready, I added. Don't make me serve it sooner than planned. Then I ended the call and blocked their numbers. The fallout. Within minutes, my inbox filled with messages. Distant relatives. Family friends. Even people I hadn't spoken to in years. You're being cruel. Family should forgive family. I didn't even bother opening them.
Delete. Delete. Delete.
Some debts can't be repaid with forgiveness. 4 months later, I stood in the empty house, my footsteps echoing through the vacant rooms. My family had finally moved out last week, forced to downsize to a small apartment across town. They had tried everything.
Threats.
Guilt trips. Even legal challenges. But in the end, the documents were ironclad. They had no choice but to accept reality. John's attempt to ruin my career had backfired spectacularly. Thanks to my preemptive documentation and Uncle Anthony's evidence, his false accusations were dismissed immediately. Instead, his actions were reported to the real estate board, triggering an ethics investigation. His career was over. My mother's final attempt at manipulation came in the form of a tear-filled voicemail. How could you do this to your own family? I didn't even need to think about my answer. They had shown me exactly what family meant to them. And this time, I believed them. The ending they never saw coming. I walked into the kitchen, the place where it had all started, where they had sat around this very table, laughing about how worthless I was, while I had been paying their bills. The irony wasn't lost on me. Uncle Anthony and his wife were coming over later to help me prepare the house for sale. The proceeds would go toward starting a foundation for victims of financial abuse. At least something good could come out of all of this. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Just heard from their lawyer. They finally signed the last papers. It's really over. I smiled, looking around the empty house one last time. They had always told me family comes first, but they never specified which family. So I chose myself. And for the first time in years, that felt exactly right. I whispered to myself in shock. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't unlock the door. It had been a long and exhausting day at work, and all I wanted was to go inside and rest. But instead, I found my personal belongings thrown carelessly in front of the entrance, as if they were garbage. I looked at the door and noticed something was different. It looked like it had been changed. No matter how hard I tried, the key wouldn't turn. It was as if the door was refusing to let me in. This was the last straw. I had been through so much over the years while living with my in-laws. Every day had been a struggle, and this moment made it clear. I could not stay there any longer. I made up my mind. I would not step foot in that house again. I gathered my things, packed them into my car, and decided to go back to my parents' home. It felt like the only place I could truly find peace. Months passed, and I tried to move on with my life. Then, out of the blue, I received a message from my in-laws. It was unexpected, and for a moment, I wasn't sure how to feel. The connection between us had seemed broken, yet here they were, reaching out. Let me introduce myself. My name is Olivia, and I am 36 years old. My husband, Henry, is 6 years younger than me. I have always been dedicated to my career. In fact, before I got married, I never thought much about relationships. I had never been on many dates and didn't feel the need to settle down. Marriage wasn't something I had planned for myself. But Henry was different. He worked under me at my job and was persistent in his pursuit. He made it clear that he wanted to be with me and promised that I wouldn't have to give up my career after marriage. He said he would take care of the household chores so I could continue working. His commitment and support made me reconsider my thoughts on marriage. I realized that while I was unsure about getting married, the idea of having children had crossed my mind from time to time. As I neared 36, I knew that if I ever wanted to start a family, I was running out of time. So, I made my decision. I married Henry. At first, things were great. It was just the two of us, and Henry kept his word. He supported me in my career and handled most of the household responsibilities. I appreciated his efforts, and life seemed smooth. But then, everything changed. About 7 months into our marriage, tragedy struck. Henry's father passed away suddenly. He had always been a healthy man, so his death was a complete shock to everyone. My mother-in-law and Henry's younger sister, Helen, were devastated. They said they couldn't manage on their own and needed our support. Helen, who is 34, works as a freelancer. She earns a decent income, but she spends a lot of her time and money on her hobbies. Because of this, she isn't financially stable. My mother-in-law also struggled to cope with the loss. They both expected us to step in and help them. That's when everything in our lives started to change. I always thought Helen should find a full-time job. Whenever she and my mother-in-law came to talk to me, Henry would bring up the idea of all of us living together. "Olivia, have you thought about moving in with my mom and sister? You can keep freelancing as usual, and having them around would make house chores easier. What do you think?" Henry asked me one day. I hesitated before answering. "I'm fine with keeping my work schedule, but I don't know about taking on more chores. If your mom moves in and we're helping her, shouldn't she be responsible for most of the housework?" Henry nodded. "Fair point. I'll talk to my mom and Helen about it. Please think about it, and we'll wait for their response." I had my own life and financial matters to consider, so I made sure to tell Henry that I wanted everything carefully planned. It might have seemed cold, but I knew that caregiving required proper preparation. In the end, Henry assured me that his family would handle all the housework. I even thought about asking for a written agreement, but decided against it. Since they were family, I chose to trust them, and we moved into Henry's family home. On our first day there, I went to greet my mother-in-law. "I'm looking forward to living together. As Henry mentioned, I'll continue working as usual, so I hope you and Helen can manage the house chores," I said politely. She didn't even look at me before replying. Why did Henry marry someone like her? She works, so all the chores will fall on me? Is that what a wife should be? A wife is supposed to handle both work and household duties, isn't she? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She wanted to do everything herself, but also seemed to blame me for it. Her words were loud and clear, and then she just walked away. This wasn't what I had expected at all. I stood there, feeling uneasy about our future in that house. Later, as we unpacked our belongings in silence, Helen suddenly appeared at the doorway. She looked at me with disapproval and said, "I ended up with a less than adorable sister-in-law. Poor Henry." With that, she left just as quickly as she had come. First, my mother-in-law had made me feel unwelcome, and now Helen was doing the same. I could already tell that living here was going to be much harder than I had imagined. I couldn't understand why they wanted to live with me after speaking so badly about me. Later, I realized it was all about my money. Soon after moving in together, I noticed something troubling. On our first day under the same roof, despite their sarcastic remarks before, my mother-in-law and Helen completely ignored me. They only prepared meals when my husband was home, but never offered to help with cleaning or laundry for me. I tried to bring up their broken promises several times, but whenever I politely addressed my mother-in-law as ma'am, she would glare at me and walk away, making it clear she didn't want to talk. Helen didn't ignore me as openly, but I still felt like I couldn't speak up against either of them. Over time, doing my own laundry and cleaning up after work became my daily routine. I wanted to tell my husband about how they were treating me, but I hesitated because I felt sorry for him. However, things got even worse when they started having financial troubles. They began pressuring me for money, though they avoided asking directly. Instead, they left notes under my food. Just today, I found a note from my mother-in-law. "We're struggling this month. Could you lend us $500? I thought about discussing it with my husband, but he was also short on cash because of his social life and drinking habits. He often asked, "Can we cut down on expenses this month?" When he was my subordinate at work, I had always made sure he didn't overspend on unnecessary parties. But after switching departments post-marriage, he found it hard to refuse invitations, and these costs kept adding up. It was difficult for me to bring up my in-laws' financial demands with him. So, reluctantly, I gave in and treated the money as a loan. This pattern continued for 3 years. My husband became more and more comfortable not contributing to household expenses. Instead, he kept telling me to cut back on spending every month as if it was my responsibility alone. I found myself stuck in this cycle, constantly handing over money while my in-laws found new ways to ask for more. I felt trapped. It was like an endless scheme, yet I continued to play along. But there was something else I was still doing. I'll explain that soon. One day, when I returned home from work, I found something shocking. Many of my personal belongings were scattered outside the house. I walked closer, trying to make sense of what had happened. I realized that the scattered belongings were mine. My heart pounded with anger. How could they treat my things so carelessly? Furious, I marched up to the front door and tried to unlock it, only to find that my key no longer worked. They changed the locks while I was gone. I muttered in disbelief. I can't take this anymore. As I stood there, overwhelmed with frustration, my eyes fell on a piece of paper placed beneath my belongings. I picked it up and read the cruel message. Don't ever come back. We don't want to see your face. Consider yourself lucky we didn't throw away your stuff. I clenched my fists. My mother-in-law and Helen were obviously behind this. I wondered if Henry had played a part in it, or if he had simply stood by and let it happen. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. Luckily, I had my car keys. Without wasting time, I gathered as much of my stuff as I could, packed it into the car, and drove straight to my parents' house. A wave of relief washed over me, knowing that at least my belongings were safe. No matter what happened next, my work wouldn't be affected. When I arrived at my parents' home, they were shocked to see me with all my things. But their reaction quickly turned into warm concern as they welcomed me back. It had been 3 years since I had spent any real time here. Sitting at the dining table with a cup of tea my mother had brewed, I finally felt a sense of comfort that I had long forgotten. My father looked at me seriously. Why did you bring all your belongings here? Did you leave their house? Marriage requires patience, Olivia. His words made me think about everything I had endured. For 3 years, my interactions with my mother-in-law and Helen had been minimal, except for the constant notes demanding money. Henry had become completely dependent on my income, treating me like an ATM rather than a partner. I had tolerated everything until now. When I explained everything to my parents, they listened with empathy. My mother sighed, Olivia, you've been patient enough. We won't ask you to suffer any longer. Now that they've driven you away, there's no reason to go back. Maybe you should think about sending Henry divorce papers, my father added. He seemed like a decent man when you married him, but money changes people. It's unfortunate. Hearing their support brought unexpected tears to my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt truly understood. Has it been that hard on you? My father asked gently. I wiped my eyes and smiled. No, it's just, I haven't felt this level of kindness in a long time. It's comforting. I took a deep breath and nodded. You're right, Dad. I'll send Henry the divorce papers. But I want to watch the situation for a little while. I have a feeling something interesting is going to happen soon. I had a feeling that something was about to happen soon, and surprisingly, it did, just 4 months later. By then, I had moved out of my parents' home and settled into a new apartment of my own. For the first time in a long while, I had full control over my earnings and could spend my money however I pleased. I hired a housekeeping service to take care of the chores, which allowed me to truly enjoy my free time. I treated myself to shopping trips, small vacations, and things I had long wanted but never felt free to buy. Every day, I appreciated the value of my hard-earned money even more. Looking back, I couldn't understand why I had endured those 2 miserable years. It dawned on me that maybe I had been manipulated by my in-laws, tricked into sacrificing my own happiness for their benefit. Then, exactly 4 months after they threw me out and changed the locks, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. At first, I ignored the call, but then it rang again.
And again.
A 5th time in quick succession. Something must be wrong, I thought. I picked up the next call, and before I could even say a word, another call came through. Olivia, where are you? I went to your parents' house, but they wouldn't tell me anything. I also tried your workplace, but they wouldn't tell me either. It was my mother-in-law. This was someone who had ignored me for 3 years, yet now she was calling me in a panic. Her voice sounded hesitant, even nervous. I remained silent, waiting to see what she would say next. Hello? Are you still there? Please come back soon and restore our lives. We can't even afford to go out and enjoy ourselves anymore. What are we supposed to do now? I almost laughed. She was more worried about her leisure time than the fact that they had kicked me out. I thought cutting back on spending would be enough, but clearly it's not. Our phone and electricity are about to be cut off. We're at our wits' end. Please come back immediately. Did she really not see the irony? Shouldn't she start by apologizing for throwing me out? I waited, but no apology came. Olivia? Are you listening? Don't you care that we're struggling? She added, sounding frustrated. Realizing she had no sense of remorse, I ended the call without a word. The next day, my phone rang again. This time it was Helen. Olivia, why did you ignore Mom's call yesterday? We're in trouble, and you didn't even try to help. She couldn't even tell if you were listening. Ignoring calls like that is really immature, you know. I sighed. Of course, Helen would call to scold me. For 3 years, they had ignored me, treated me like an outsider, and only spoke to me when they wanted money. And now, suddenly, I was the one in the wrong. I couldn't believe her nerve. I thought about staying on the call a little longer, but without an apology, I had no reason to respond. I heard from Mom that we're having financial troubles at home. Our phone and electricity might be cut off soon. Without air conditioning in this heat, we could suffer from heat stroke.
Can you live with that?
If our phone gets disconnected, how will we reach you? So please come back and help us pay the overdue bills. Her selfish demands made it easy for me to ignore her. Hey, are you listening? You haven't said a word. Oh, are you still upset about what happened 4 months ago? That was just a joke. You're overreacting. As an adult, you should know the difference between a joke and something serious. Stop being stubborn and come back home. They had thrown out my belongings like trash and changed the locks, so I couldn't get in. That was a clear message for me not to return. Now, they were trying to convince me that it was just a joke? How could I believe that when Helen didn't even bother apologizing? I decided to end the call. There was no point in wasting more time listening to her nonsense. The next day, I received a call from my husband. Hello, Olivia.
I'm sorry.
My mother, my sister, and we all realize we've done terrible things. Can you come back? Our household is falling apart. We're out of money. Everyone is on edge, and tensions are high. We sincerely apologize and want you back. Please. At least my husband understood the need to apologize, but it was far too late. Why had he ignored me for 4 months? If he had reached out within the first few days, I might have considered coming back. But 4 months had passed. In that time, I had built a new life, and I was finally enjoying my independence. There was no reason for me to go back to that toxic household now. I appreciate your apology, Henry, but after everything that's happened, I have no intention of coming back. I paused before asking, Henry, why were you unreachable for 4 months? How could you do that as a husband? I decided to do some investigating, and guess what? I found out the truth. You've been cheating, haven't you? That's exactly what the detective agency confirmed. For 3 years, you treated me like an ATM, using my money while hiding your lies. Well, I'm done. I'll be sending you the divorce papers soon, so be ready to handle them properly. Maybe my husband thought he would never get caught. What a fool. And yet, he still had the audacity to say, I want you to come back. I smirked and replied, if you pay me back for all the living expenses I covered for the 3 of us over the past 3 years and return the money I lent you, maybe I'll consider it. Let's see, that comes to about $180,000.
Can you manage that?
I knew very well he couldn't afford it, but I wanted to make it clear that I was serious. After a moment of silence, he suddenly hung up the phone. Maybe he finally realized that I was truly done with him. A few days later, I sent him the divorce papers along with the bill for emotional distress. His response was immediate. Without argument, he signed the divorce papers and sent them back. Now, all I had left to do was file them at the city office, and the divorce would be official. As for the compensation, he transferred the money right away. Of course, I had made sure to include a note with the bill, warning him that if he didn't pay up, I would expose his infidelity to his company. Clearly afraid of the consequences, he must have rushed to take out a loan to cover the cost. From what I've heard, their family home is now on the market. It seems they are struggling financially and are desperate to raise funds. However, selling their house in a hurry means they will now have to find a place to rent. Considering how much rent and utilities cost, I doubt they made a smart choice. They probably panicked and didn't think about the long-term consequences. But honestly, their problems are none of my concern anymore. As for me, I'm living my best life. I finally feel free and independent. I'm enjoying my single life, doing the things I love, and making my own choices without anyone taking advantage of me. I've had my fill of marriage, and I have no regrets. My name is Erica, and I was 6 years old when my little sister, Sydney, was born. I remember the day my parents brought her home from the hospital. She was so small, wrapped in a pink blanket. "Erica," my mom said, "you're a big sister now. You have to help us take care of Sydney." Those words stayed with me throughout my childhood. Our house was simple but cozy, in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knew each other. My parents both had regular jobs. Dad was an accountant and Mom worked as a secretary. We weren't rich, but I always thought we had enough. At least until I noticed that things were different for Sydney and me. As we got older, it became clear that my parents treated us differently. When I was 11 and Sydney was 5, I accidentally broke a plate while washing dishes. My punishment? No TV for a week and extra chores. The next day, Sydney knocked over Mom's favorite vase while running around the house. "She's just a little girl," Mom said, sweeping up the broken pieces. "She doesn't know any better." This kind of thing happened all the time. I had to do chores to earn my allowance, but Sydney got money just because. If I wanted new clothes, I had to wait for special occasions. But if Sydney saw a dress in a store and pointed at it, she got it right away. Every day felt like an endless list of responsibilities. I woke up early to help Sydney get ready for school, walked her to her elementary school before heading to my own, and rushed back after my classes to pick her up. I helped her with homework, made sure she had snacks, and kept her entertained. Then one Friday in October, everything changed. That morning started like any other. I got up early, packed Sydney's lunch, and went to school. I had a math test that day, but my mind kept wandering. In my backpack was a summer camp brochure, something I had been dreaming about. I had been saving my allowance and doing extra chores all year, so I could go to a special art camp. My paintings even earned me a small scholarship. Just 7 more weeks, and I would finally be there. During lunch, Mom sent me a text. "Don't forget to pick up your sister at 2:30. As if I could forget, I had been picking her up for years. My math test ran late, but I still ran as fast as I could to Sydney's school. I got there at 2:45. The schoolyard was empty. My heart started pounding. I checked every classroom, the playground, even the bathrooms. No sign of her. "Sydney, have you seen my sister?" I asked the janitor, who was mopping the hallway. "The one with the blue backpack?" "She left with some friends right after the bell." My hands shook as I dialed her number. Straight to voicemail. I called again and again. Nothing. Maybe she went to Jenna's house, I thought, remembering her best friend. I ran 7 blocks, my backpack bouncing on my back. Jenna's mom opened the door. "Sorry, honey, I haven't seen her today." For the next 7 hours, I searched everywhere. The mall where she liked to window shop. The ice cream parlor she always begged me to take her to. The park where she hung out with her friends. My phone battery was dying. My feet were covered in blisters, but I couldn't stop. What if something bad had happened? At 9:10 p.m., I dragged myself home, ready to face my parents' worry and their anger. But when I walked in, there she was, sitting at the kitchen table, calmly eating pizza with Mom and Dad. "Where have you been?" Mom yelled, her face red with anger. "We've been worried sick." I stood there, too shocked to speak. I've been looking for her everywhere. She wasn't at school, and her phone was off. Before I could say more, Sydney spoke first. Her eyes filled with tears. That's not true. I waited for hours after school, but Erica never came. My phone died, and I didn't know what to do. I went to my friend's house to call, but no one answered. Then I got lost trying to find my way home. I couldn't believe it. She was lying. I started to speak, but Dad cut me off. We don't want to hear your excuses, Erica. Your sister could have been hurt. She ended up on the other side of town because of your carelessness. But I was there. The janitor saw her leave with her friends right after school. Enough. Mom slammed her hand on the table. Go to your room and give me your phone. And forget about summer camp.
What? No.
I've been saving all year. I even got a scholarship. You should have thought about that before abandoning your sister. Maybe this will teach you responsibility. I looked at Sydney. She was hiding a smirk behind her slice of pizza. And in that moment, something inside me broke. All these years of reading her bedtime stories, buying her treats with my allowance, helping her with homework, it didn't matter. She wasn't my sister. She was just someone who happened to live in the same house. That night, I packed away all the board games we used to play together. I took down the drawings she made for me. I threw out the half-eaten bag of her favorite candy I kept in my desk. From now on, Sydney was just another person who lived in our house. Nothing more. Through middle school and high school, I focused only on my studies. My parents always talked about a college fund. At every family gathering, they proudly told relatives how they had been saving since we were born so both of us could get a good education. Once, I overheard Mom on the phone, mentioning the amount. It was enough to cover 4 years at a state university for each of us. In my junior year, I spent countless nights working on scholarship applications. My SAT scores were nearly perfect, my grades were all A's, and my teachers wrote glowing recommendations. When the acceptance letters arrived, I could hardly believe it. I had received a full scholarship to my top choice university. One evening, I decided to tell my parents the news. Mom, Dad, I have some good news, I said, holding the scholarship letter. I got a full ride to college, tuition, room, and board. Everything is covered. Mom looked up from her phone. That's nice, honey. My heart pounded with hope. Since you won't need to spend the college money you saved for me, maybe I could use it for something else. I've been looking into it, and it would be enough for a down payment on a small apartment. Or maybe even to start a business after graduation. The room went silent. Dad muted the TV. Mom's voice was sharp. What college money? I frowned. The money you've been saving for our education. Dad cleared his throat. Erica, that's our money. We saved it. We decide how to spend it. I felt my stomach drop. But you always said it was for our college education. I protested. Since I got a scholarship, we should use that money for something else. Mom cut me off. College is getting more expensive every year. Your sister might need extra help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, because I worked hard and got a scholarship, I don't get anything? How is that fair? Life isn't fair, Dad snapped. And it's not your money to claim. End of discussion. I stormed up to my room, my eyes burning with angry tears. The next few weeks were unbearable. My parents acted like nothing had happened. They talked about graduation and dorm shopping as if they hadn't just crushed my hopes. Whenever I tried to bring up the subject again, they either walked away or changed the topic. As I packed my bags for college that summer, I realized something. I was actually lucky. Lucky that I had worked so hard for that scholarship. Lucky that I hadn't counted on them for my education. Because now I knew the truth. In this family, I could only count on myself. The day I left for college, I quietly loaded my 2 suitcases into an Uber while my family slept upstairs. No tearful goodbyes. No family photos on the front porch. No care package of homemade cookies. Just the quiet click of the front door closing behind me. My first week on campus, I got a job at the university coffee shop. The hours were brutal. 6 a.m. openings before class, weekend shifts while other students went out partying. but it meant I could buy my own textbooks and never have to worry about running out of toothpaste. The only contact I had with my family was short voice messages on birthdays and holidays. Happy birthday, Mom. Hope you have a great day. Merry Christmas, everyone. Stay warm. They rarely replied. And when they did, it was just as short. Thanks, sweetie. Take care. One night, when I couldn't sleep, I found myself scrolling through Mom's Facebook page. There they were, dozens of family photos I had never seen before. Sydney, now 15, on stage at her dance recital, dressed in sparkly costumes. Her fancy birthday party, complete with a DJ and professional decorations. Family dinners with aunts, uncles, and cousins, where she was clearly the center of attention. Photos of her winning a school talent show, hanging out with her friends at the mall, smiling on her first day of 9th grade.
But there was nothing about me.
No mention that I was about to graduate summa cum laude from a top university. No photos of my empty chair at holiday gatherings. It was as if I had been erased from the family. After graduation, my friend Andrea had an idea. Let's rent an apartment together in Fresno. The tech scene is booming there. We could both get good jobs. Going back to South Dakota hadn't even crossed my mind. I got a job at a medium-sized marketing company, starting in an entry-level position. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough to cover my half of the rent in our small 3-bedroom apartment. I worked hard, staying late, learning new skills, and volunteering for tough projects. Soon, I was earning enough to afford my own place, a tiny studio apartment, but it was mine. Every inch of it paid for by my own hard work. After 4 years, I realized I had reached a limit. No matter how hard I worked, the company's structure meant I would have to wait years for a real promotion. One evening, while updating my LinkedIn profile, I got a message from a recruiter at Tech Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in Fresno. Your profile caught my attention, she wrote. Would you be interested in discussing an opportunity with us? The interview process was tough. 5 rounds of meetings, a presentation, and a strategy proposal, but at 28, I was ready for the challenge. When the offer came, I could hardly believe it. My new salary was nearly double what I was making, plus stock options and bonuses that made my head spin. My career took off. Within 3 years, I was leading my own team. My smart investments paid off, and soon, I walked into a Mercedes dealership and signed papers for a car I had only dreamed of in college. A few months later, I was approved for a mortgage on a beautiful 3-bedroom apartment in one of Fresno's best neighborhoods. Life was good, peaceful, until my phone rang one November evening. Erica. My mother's voice sounded different, almost hesitant. How are you? I almost dropped my wine glass. We hadn't talked beyond short holiday messages in years. I'm fine, I said, keeping my voice calm. Is everything okay? Yes. We haven't seen you in so long. Would you come home for Christmas this year? For weeks later, I pulled up to my parents' house in my new Mercedes. Inside, I saw that some things hadn't changed. Sydney, now 25 and a fresh college graduate, was still living at home. She sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone while Mom fussed over the dinner table and Dad pretended to be busy with his newspaper. Erica. Mom hugged me awkwardly. We've missed you so much. Dad nodded from behind his paper. You look well. Dinner was awkward, forced politeness, small talk, and long silences. Sydney barely spoke, but I noticed her watching me throughout the meal. Finally, she broke the silence. You've gained weight, she said with that same old smirk. I guess making all that money means you can eat whatever you want now, Sydney said, smirking. I looked at her, then at my plate of Mom's Christmas roast, and smiled. Actually, I just have a peaceful life now. It's amazing how good life can be when no one is around to bother you. The silence that followed was sweeter than any Christmas dessert. After dinner, Mom asked me to stay behind while Dad and Sydney cleared the table. She led me to the old living room sofa, the same one where they once told me my college fund wasn't really mine. Erica, honey, she began, her voice soft, like when I was a child, when she wanted something. I need to talk to you about something important. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Her hands nervously played with the edge of her sweater. "Your father retired last spring," she said. "His health isn't great anymore, and his medication costs are, well, they're more than we expected. I had to cut back to part-time at work to take care of him." I sat quietly, waiting for her to continue. "The house needs work too," she added, pointing at the water stains on the ceiling. "The roof leaks, the furnace is old, and we can barely afford basic repairs. We're struggling, Erica." Then came the words I knew were coming. "We've seen how well you're doing, that beautiful car outside, your success. We're so proud of you. We were wondering if maybe you could help us out a little." I looked around at the house where I had grown up. The fading wallpaper, the worn carpet. Despite everything, I couldn't stand the thought of my parents struggling. "I'll send you $2,000 a month," I heard myself say. Mom's eyes lit up. She threw her arms around me, hugging me for the second time that night. "Oh, Erica, thank you, sweetheart. This means so much to us." True to my word, I set up the monthly transfers as soon as I got back to Fresno. Like clockwork, $2,000 went to my parents' account every month. I told myself it was for Dad's medical bills and house repairs. I didn't ask for receipts or proof. I was too busy with work to worry about how they spent it. But every now and then, when I had a rare free moment, I would check Sydney's Facebook page. There she was at a fancy new fusion restaurant, posting pictures of expensive sushi platters. Another post showed shopping bags from designer boutiques. She posed in new outfits in every photo, expensive ones, judging by the brand names. All this while still living at home with our struggling parents. Maybe she got a job? I wondered about it, but her post didn't make sense. Lunch at fancy cafes on Sunday afternoons. Shopping sprees on Saturday mornings. Spa days on Thursdays. If she had a job, when did she work? But I was too busy with my own life to think about it too much. My team was growing, we had big projects launching, and I was up for another promotion. Then the call came, right in the middle of an important meeting. Mom never called during work hours. Our only contact for the past year had been through the monthly bank transfer notifications. I stepped out of the conference room. "Erica, we need your help," Mom said immediately, skipping any greetings. Her voice sounded urgent, more serious than I had heard since I was a child. "We need $100,000. It's an emergency." "Mom, wait." But she had already hung up. I stared at my phone, confused and afraid. My first thought was Dad. His health had been getting worse. That's why I had been sending money home every month. Was he in the hospital? Did he need emergency surgery? I remembered how weak he had looked at Christmas. The medical system was expensive. One bad illness could ruin a family financially. I rushed back into the meeting room, grabbed my things. "I'm sorry, everyone. I have a family emergency." I handed things over to my teammate Morgan, canceled all my meetings for the week, and booked the first flight to South Dakota. The entire trip, my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Dad in the ICU, life-saving procedures they couldn't afford, impossible choices they had to make. I had read the headlines about families going bankrupt because of medical bills. Was this happening to my family? I rented a car and followed the GPS to my parents' house. 30 minutes away. Then I noticed something strange. All the lights in the house were on. I could see it from the end of the street. That wasn't what I expected in a medical emergency. Usually, in a crisis, people forget to turn on lights. I barely had time to knock before Mom opened the door. Her face fell when she saw me, like I was a salesperson at the door, not her daughter who had just flown across the country for an emergency. "Erica, what are you doing here?" Behind her, I saw Dad sitting in his chair, looking completely fine, reading a magazine. Sydney was in the living room, pacing back and forth, typing furiously on her phone. "You didn't have to come," Mom said, hesitating before letting me in. "We just needed you to send the money." The house smelled like coffee and pastries, not the air of a family in crisis. I looked around, confused. Then my eyes landed on the bridal magazines scattered across the coffee table. What was really going on? At first, I didn't notice. "Dad, are you okay?" I asked. "He's fine," Mom said quickly, throwing Sydney a warning look. Everyone's fine. You really didn't need to come all this way. That's when Sydney stepped forward, practically bouncing with excitement. She held out her left hand, and a massive diamond ring sparkled in the light. It had to be at least 2 carats, way more than her fiancé could afford on his entry-level salary. "I'm getting married," she squealed. "And we need the money for the wedding. $100,000 should cover the basics." I stood there, completely stunned, my carry-on bag still in my hand. The emergency that made me cancel work, book a last-minute flight, and worry myself sick was a wedding? "Well, we need to book the venue soon," Mom said, as if this made perfect sense. She sat on the couch, smoothing her skirt like we were just discussing weekend plans. $100,000 isn't much for a wedding these days. It's really quite modest when you think about it. Sydney nodded, still admiring her ring. "I actually wanted a $200,000 wedding," she said, "but I thought about you, sis. I cut everything in half to make it easier for you. You should be thanking me, really. I mean, $100,000 isn't a lot for you anymore." I looked at my sister's smug face, at my mother's expectant expression, and something inside me finally snapped. "No," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I won't give you a penny for this wedding." The silence was deafening. "What?" Sydney whispered, her face shifting from shock to rage. "You heard me. I won't pay for a wedding for someone who has made my life miserable since we were kids. Someone who lied about me, stole from me, and got me punished for things I didn't do. Someone whose tricks cost me my summer camp, my phone privileges, and so much more." I turned to my parents. "And you? You always took her side. You always believed her lies over my truth. How dare you?" Mom jumped up from the couch. "After everything we've done for you," she shouted. I laughed. "Everything you've done for me? Fine. Let's talk about what you've actually done with my money. Show me the receipts." "What receipts?" Dad finally spoke. "The medical bills I've been paying for. The house repairs you said you needed. Show me where my $320,000 went over the past year." The room went completely silent. Mom and Dad exchanged nervous glances. "We used it for necessary things," Mom stammered. "Necessary things?" I repeated. "Like Sydney's shopping sprees? Her expensive restaurant visits? Her designer clothes?" I pulled out my phone and opened Sydney's Facebook page. Funny how someone living with our struggling parents can afford Gucci bags and weekly spa visits. Sydney's face turned red. "You've been stalking me." "No," I said calmly. "I've just been watching you show off my money all over social media." "You selfish jerk," Sydney screamed, tears running down her face. "You have everything, a fancy job, a nice car, a beautiful apartment. Why can't you share? We raised you better than this." Dad stepped in. "You've become a greedy, heartless person." I felt calm. Calmer than I had ever felt before. "Heartless," I repeated. "No. What's heartless is tricking your daughter into giving you money. What's heartless is spending her college fund on your favorite child. What's heartless is lying about medical bills to fund Sydney's shopping and vacations." I picked up my bag. "I'm done. The monthly payment stopped today. Don't call me. Don't message me. Don't ask me for anything ever again. You can't do this to us." Sydney was in full hysterics now, mascara running down her face. "I've already told everyone about my dream wedding." I walked to the door and turned back one last time. "That sounds like a you problem." The calls and messages started before I even reached my rental car. By the time I got to my hotel, my phone was flooded. Texts calling me selfish and ungrateful. Voicemails from Mom, crying about family obligations. Messages from Sydney, threatening to tell everyone what a terrible person I was. Fine. Let everyone know. I sat down at my laptop and started typing. An open letter about family, money, and the truth. I explained everything: the childhood manipulation, the stolen college fund, the recent financial lies. I attached screenshots of Sydney's luxury shopping and fancy dinners, all posted during the months I was sending money for medical bills. I ended the letter with their demand for a $100,000 wedding. The post went viral within our extended family. Aunt Lauren called it disgraceful behavior. Cousin Sam said he had never seen such manipulation. Uncle Owen, always the family peacemaker, canceled his RSVP to Sydney's wedding. 4 months later, my cousin John gave me an update. Sydney's dream wedding? A quiet dinner at Olive Garden with her husband's family and our parents. No designer dress. No fancy venue. No elaborate flowers. Just breadsticks and a limited menu. I smiled when I heard the news, but I didn't feel any satisfaction. I was too busy living my own life. My team at work had just finished a successful project launch. I had started dating Kevin, a kind software engineer who respected my boundaries about family. My therapist said I was making excellent progress. Sometimes late at night, I still see message requests from my family. I delete them without reading. The little girl who once desperately wanted her parents' approval is gone. In her place is a woman who finally understands. Real family isn't about blood. It's about shared values.